Hey everyone, we're back with the Be Beautiful podcast. Today with me is my good friend, Schyler Kopp, motorcycle racer, ex-Red Bull BMX rider, essentially a pro bike mechanic at this point for bicycles. I am Cody of the Be Beautiful Foundation, Zupac Athletic Club. Today, we're going to be unpacking my experience with the Unbound Gravel 200 for our full distance 200-mile race that I just got back from in Emporia, Kansas. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to do this video a little bit different for everyone tuning in. We're going to do our intros like always. I'm going to start with my recap of how the race went, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the experience as a whole. We're going to spend some time talking about tech and what we learned with Schyler's experience as a bicycle mechanic, our experience as racers and athletes in general, and then some of the questions that came up and from the race in terms of setup. So before we get started, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Be Beautiful Foundation. The reason that we do everything is to get athletes living with developmental disabilities involved in an active and healthy lifestyle. Through the Be Beautiful Foundation, we provide professional mental health counseling services as well as personal training. My good friend Schyler has been with me since the start. We know each other from growing up racing together, racing motorcycles. He still has his behind me. I've traded mine in for the bicycles, but that's okay. Schyler's okay with beating his head into the ground. I had to change sports at some point. I also want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors that made the Unbound 200 possible and make my season possible. Every brand that we work with is a massive supporter, not just of me as an athlete, but of the Be Beautiful Foundation in general. It is how we garner support from our community. It's how I give back to the community. So first and foremost, roll recovery, one of my 5 disciplines, recovery every day. They make some of the best products and innovative products. Schyler has used them with me in the ultra running community. Massive part in my recovery after the ankle surgery that I'm still rehabbing from. I use their stuff every day. Animal Pack Protein. It's one of the few pure supplement companies that I trust. Anyone that's followed me knows that I ended up having surgery a long time ago, about 6 years ago, because of dirty supplements. Animal Pack, I went back to after leaving them, which was a giant mistake. And I have not had a problem since. Again, vital in terms of nailing nutrition pre-race day and getting me back to being healthy. Our other sponsors, 51 Speed Shop behind me. As you guys can see, I have the high arm cups and the arrow extensions. I have my new ones ready to go for my TT race this weekend. Those are going on the bike tomorrow, and then we're going to get prepped. Awesome company to work with. Rudy Project helmets behind me. As always, sunglasses, helmets. They've kept my head safe. Anyone that followed me down Maryland, I had that huge crash. Helmets look brand new. Fastest helmets in the wind tunnel. Can't say more positive things about them. Some of our triathlon brands, Blue 70, the swimmer's wetsuit, Ironman champion wetsuit. Our head coach, Ray, wears them. He's a swim guru, D1 national coach. All of our team is wearing Blue 70 when we go out. Pearl Izumi for some of the most comfortable shoes and kit that you can wear. I was wearing the shoes and gloves for the full 200. I was comfortable the entire time. No problems with my feet. That says everything you need to know. Same with Jackrew Apparel, massive supporter of the Be Beautiful Foundation and Community Hope for Veterans New Jersey. They help make our kits. Again, I was wearing the kit for 14 hours from pre-race to the end of the race and after the fact. For 200, I was in my suit all day and I was comfortable all day. Cannot say enough positive things about them. And their team, I help with their development. They're awesome people. They go so far out of their way to make sure that all of your products look amazing when they come off the print. Also, HED Wheels behind us, who I wear for race wheels. Race day, it's the heads. They are some of the best bearings I've ever raced with. We're going to be talking a little bit about their technology. I had a really cool talk with them, so I wanted to mention them up front at the beginning of the video. Me and Schyler are going to be talking a little bit about bearings, hubs, and performance of Aero wheels and what they may or may not have done, and how the right wheel choice was really important for Unbound. I also want to give our shout out to not just Zupac Athletic Club, which is how we do our personal training with all of our athletes not involved with the Be Beautiful Foundation, but also to Community Hope for Veterans, who we do mental health counseling and address homelessness in New Jersey among veteran communities. I myself run the suicide prevention teams and transitional housing services after transitioning from our GPT homeless shelters. It's a really important thing nationwide. All of our programs are working with the VA to alleviate these issues across the country. If you want to get more involved or want to know more, visit communityhope-nj.org. If you want to learn more about the Be Beautiful Foundation, bebeautifulfoundation.org, or you can visit our hub for all things Zupac, Zupac, Z-O-O-P-A-K, AC.com, and I'll take you both to our photography, Zupac Photos, Zupac AC, and Be Beautiful Foundation. I also want to give a shout out to our family and friends who have given me all the support to be able to do what I do and be able to give back to our communities. Okay, so with that, we're going to jump into how the race went. Schyler, I know you were following me. Thanks for following me on that long day. I'm going to jump right into things. That way we can get rolling. So if you want, you can follow our Instagram page at Zupac Athletic Club, and also second page at Be Beautiful Foundation. Depending on what the post is, it might go both ways. It might go one to the other. Depending on donors where we recognize and athletes that we work with and everything else. But anyone that's been following those posts saw the race start was electric, showed up. It was a 3 a.m. wake-up call, got to location. I was staying a little bit away from the race start because it's a smaller city we start with in Emporia, Kansas. It's bigger than I thought. It is a full-blown race community. The entire town was ready for this race. We had, I think, over 5,000 signups between all the races for the 200 age grouper alone, not including elite athletes. We had 1,100 signups that showed up. I think 1,600 signups and 1,100 showed up to the start line. It was packed. It was awesome. We kicked off at 6:30. The pros kicked off at 6. Pro women kicked off about 15 minutes after, and then we kicked off after them. So my race ended up going a little bit sideways like everyone else, but we knew going into this that it was a marathon and we were going to face adversity and we had to get into it. So I was shocked at how lightning fast the start was. I think it was a faster and harder start than when I was down in Maryland for the GFNY Grand Tour start. We came out, I was hitting 1,000 watts coming out of turns, just trying to keep up with everyone. So I was right mid-pack or front peloton. I didn't want to be too far ahead, too far back. So I was just working my way through the pack. There were points I was looking down. We were rolling over 2% grade hills, pushing 400 watts for extended periods of time. Like, I couldn't believe how fast we were rolling. I think up until mile 40, we probably had like 1,000 feet of elevation gain, maybe 2,000 by that point. And for an amateur group, we were holding 23 miles an hour as a peloton. So it was really just a lightning fast start. The first half of the race, so I had 2 readings. We know that my Garmin watch tends to be off by a lot for elevation, so I need to get a new one. I do work with Garmin, so I have a new watch on the way. It's coming. I want accurate readouts, but I did just get like a brand new Edge 830, which I absolutely love. That was reading 12,000 feet elevation gain, just under, by the end of the race. My watch was reading 10.5. So we were somewhere between 10.5 and 12,000 feet elevation. And then the first 40 miles, we were probably at 2 and change. There was more elevation in the first half than the second. And notably, the last 40 miles maybe had between 700 and 1,000 feet of elevation. So it was pretty flat for that last quarter. So we're flying down the roads. We're flying through gravel. There was really 2 tracks everywhere. There were additional lines that could have been taken, but we know the flints in Unbound is a big issue. Flatting is your biggest issue with racing Unbound. So there really wasn't as many lines as we want, because where there are tire tracks, there's flint in the middle, and it doesn't look bad. But the problem is, because the cars don't run over it, it hasn't been dulled down. So that flint in the middle that looks benign is actually really sharp. Same with the stuff on the edges. So I did breakdowns. They're on Instagram of my bike setup. It's still not unpacked yet, or I'd be showing what it looks like. My tire choice for the race was I was running 45s. Schyler, I think you were basically point on for what I could run with my bike. I have a 2025 Super Sex Evo SE, and I was running a 2x-road setup force with we made a last second call to, instead of running a 48 front tooth, I was running 4633 with a 3610 cassette in the back. I didn't lose out on any top end anywhere I needed to. I was really thankful we went with that bailout gear with the 33. It was really big for me. I was able to keep up with the peloton everywhere I wanted to. 45s up front. I was running Schwably G1 RS compounds front and rear. If I was going to have done something different, I would have ran in 50 in the front. We just didn't have enough time to figure it out. And the reason for that is that flint that was on the side of the roads, I really wanted to hit it, because there were times where when we were in that peloton, I was falling back and the gaps were small, and the guys that had mountain bike tires, or the big tires, were running through that flint to get ahead. So they just had more opportunities to cover ground. And I wasn't comfortable in that peloton. If you've ever been in a peloton with 100 guys, and that's what we had, it was a very, very big peloton off the front. I wasn't comfortable with that many people knowing how to handle their bike. People weren't holding their lines all over the place, bumping in bad ways, trying to get back on the 2 kind of ruts where the car tires were going, instead of just holding their line and falling in. So it was difficult to keep working my way at the front. And then I finally settled in probably the back half, somewhere like maybe 3/4 of the way back, and keeping eyes on the front, making moves where I could, but it worked to my disadvantage. Right around mile 25, we had our first crash. Just a fast section, downhill. There was a turn coming up. Someone must have just got scared and hit the brakes and had a big crash, or bumped each other and tried to fight back in the position. We were rolling downhill, probably around 28, 30 miles an hour. Big crash. I was able to get around it unscathed, kept momentum up. The group probably whittled down to maybe 70 at that point. We're riding along for about another 15 miles. Not too much excitement, just hammering out of the corners. Felt like a crit race. And then right around mile 40, we changed from gravel to dirt. Was coming downhill at least 30 miles an hour with the peloton, and big crash. It was really unfortunate. Someone went over the bars. We had maybe 12 people got caught up in the crash. We had to stop really hard. Front group kept going. I had to stop and put my feet down because there was just nowhere to go. It wasn't rolling. I had to walk through. And then all of a sudden, the peloton was broken into 2 groups. So I was in that second group, and the guys I were with, we rolled out hard, and then we basically dropped in the pace lines. We knew that the front group wasn't so far ahead that we couldn't catch them, but if we weren't with them, it was going to be a much slower race, because there was only about 10 of us with the rest of the group chasing us. So for me, not being in shape, knowing I really only had about 120 miles I knew were good. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. With the pace we were pushing, I was already behind on the fueling plan. It was really difficult to get solids in and going through bottles quicker than I wanted to, but we knew we had to make a decision, work hard at the beginning to stay with a fast group, and save as much energy for as long as possible, or burn some matches, and if we didn't catch that group, we were going to be in trouble. Well, unfortunately, I burned the matchbox with everyone else trying to chase this front group down. We were making ground. We were going to catch them. And then we hit a really tech section. When I say tech, a lot of rocks, a lot of mud. It was raining a couple days before. There was sections that didn't completely dry out. We passed a big crash with the pro women. Unfortunately, I think one of the women was hurt. She was still down. They left a half hour before us. When we came through, and we had to slightly slow down just to make sure she was safe. And maybe a mile after that, right around mile 40, I had my first big crash. We were coming downhill really quickly, and then everyone kind of stopped way too much. My tires were shedding mud. It was a really good move to run the semi-slicks. But with the way I had to slow down and get on the brakes as much as I had to, lost the front, tried to get on the pedals to save it, and then I ended up going over the bars really hard. Thank you, Rudy Project, again, for saving my head. I was fine. Luckily, I landed in mud. Luckily, my USWE water pack was filled, so it took a lot of brunt. But I cramped really hard in my right calf as I flipped over the bars. And I was down for a minute waiting for my leg to unlock, and I lost, I was looking at what the results were. I lost maybe 60 to 80 places, something like that, for people going by me while I was waiting to be able to stand up and keep moving. Kind of did a systems check. I was okay, but I knew at that point my race was over. I wasn't going to be with that front end of the winners. I probably wasn't going to make top 100 at that point. I knew I wasn't going to make top 100 at that point. I knew I didn't have the fitness for it, but shook myself off, got in a lot of water, fluids, took in the bar real quick as I was getting back on the bike. But I was really rattled at that point. I lost a lot of confidence in my ability to handle my bike. Went about another mile, a lot of tech, ended up just sliding out again. It was a matter of me just not going fast enough to carry through the mud, not being confident in my bike handling. And at that point, I was rattled. Started moving again. I didn't get my confidence back until about mile 55 when we got out of the muddy section, but we're still techy. And then mile 55 came around, and I started doing my thing. I went from a solo effort to starting to work with people again. And then again, even for those stragglers that missed the front two pelotons and kind of those just random groups of guys coming through, they were like way back from the lead group. And I was with this one group of maybe 15, 20 guys. And I looked down, and we were like pushing 350 watts sustained up this like just incline for a couple of miles. And I was looking at it like, what are we doing? This is a 200-mile race. I couldn't believe how hard people were pushing. And I should have known better, but I think I got a little caught up in it, just trying to salvage what I could and building some confidence back. We rolled through the first water station, which I always hate doing. There was only four stations. 2 were water only. 2 were aid stations where there were bad drops. So I knew we were going to roll right through that water station. I didn't want to lose the group I was with because we did have enough guys to carry some speed. And then we hit our first aid station at about mile 70. I moved through pretty good. Was feeling okay, was moving quick, was able to use the bathroom. I was able to pee a bunch of times, so I was staying up on my hydration. That part was awesome. I knew we were going into the hottest part of the day, so I filled all my bottles, refilled my bladder. I was using 25-ounce bottles with 64 grams of carbs each in them, plus what I had on my back, which was initially a carb mix, and then was water for the rest of the day. So I was getting everything in. I was actually tolerating nutrition really well, which I was happy about. And then we made a mistake. I rolled out with 2 guys. We had a good pace going. We missed the turn, which was a turn off, and we were all looking at each other, and I was even the one to say it. Was that the turn? There wasn't really anyone else with us. Nothing was marked. All 3 of us ended up losing GPS as we were rolling out of the first aid station, so we must have just been in a bad area. And we ended up riding about 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles up the road, up hills. So we picked up some elevation, before a truck passed us real quick and told us we had missed the turn. We had to backtrack. So we ended up riding about 3 or 4 miles with elevation, wrong direction, getting back on road, and then it was immediately a climb at now the hottest part of the day. So from mile 70 to 112 were definitely the most difficult miles of the day, just because there was no cloud coverage. We got up into the high 80s, low 90s. We were all running out of water. We just couldn't get enough in. I was trying to really conserve what water I had by the time we got to mile 90. And then when I got to about mile 95, I had my first flat, which was really weird. For all the sections I was hammering and flying over, and we'll talk more about tires. Schyler, I know you want to talk about tires. We talked about a little bit. I got a flat in an area I wasn't expecting it. I was riding right in the middle of where the cars run, 2 routes. There was not really a lot of flint. There was nothing sharp compared to what we were. And I just heard it. I was spraying sealant. The sealant wasn't able to fill the hole, which was weird because it was right in the middle of the tire. So made a quick decision, just bacon stripped it, plugged the hole up, held immediately. I use a little electronic air pump that has a digital gauge on it. It was awesome. So I was able to get right to where I needed to pressure wise again, rolled out, didn't have another problem. Then we get to about mile 100. It's really hot, starting to really feel dehydrated, starting to get burnt. Felt the heat impacting my ability to just think clearly at this point. And a car was coming up the road and completely just lost focus. Went to swing over to the other side of the road. Didn't see the rut. Didn't take a good route to get over it. Took the front tire, flipped over the top. I know it looked like a really bad crash for the guys behind me. And luckily, I didn't hit anyone. No one hit my bike. Everyone got through clean. And when I hit the ground, I just got really lucky, I think, because I knew there were guys behind me and I didn't want them to run me over. So I kind of just rolled real quick and tried to spin off the side of the road. And I think that really helped me to not hit my head or hurt myself. And then, the only thing that happened was my foot almost cramped, and I got lucky that it didn't at that point. Truck stopped, made sure I was okay. It was 100% my fault. It was an unnecessary crash. So really 2 crashes and 1 low-speed slide out for the day. Just got up, shook myself off, just caught my bearings and tried to lock in, and then rode the last 10 miles to the next water station, which we were all looking so forward to. And at that point, I really started to struggle because of the heat with my back and my neck. So despite the brutal climbs that were in that 70 to 112 chunk, and there were some really, really tough ones. There was only one coming out of a water creek that I had to walk up because I was just starting to cramp up, and it just wasn't worth how techy the climb was to risk cramp. So I got off the bike, pushed my bike up, walked for maybe 30, 45 seconds, got to the top, jumped back on the bike and kept moving. But I could just feel it. Even walking up the hill, I could feel my neck wanting to cramp. I could feel my legs starting to cramp. And it was just a matter of dehydration. We did the math. So for everyone that hears me keep talking about dehydration, it was really electrolytes. I was able to get in about 1,000 grams of carbs, between 1,000 and 1,100 grams of carbs for the day. I was able to take in 10 25-ounce bottles plus liters on my back. All in all, I was able to take in, I think we did the math, it came out to almost 2 gallons of water, maybe a little bit more or less, 2 gallons about, give or take, for the day. So I was able to get stuff in. It was just that hot. And anyone that's ever raced in 90-degree weather knows exactly what I'm talking about. And there was no breeze. The cloud coverage didn't come out to the very end. So if you've ever raced in that environment, you know what I'm talking about. There was just no escaping it. And it was really a matter of not cramping and managing how hard I could exert myself to get to the next station. For my neck, what was going on, if anyone's ever had a neck cramp, it's one of the most painful cramps that you can get, and it will ruin your day completely. Um, Schyler racing motorcycles, we get all the time where how hard we're torquing our neck to try to pull through turns and how much fluids we're losing. So I know all the motorcycle racers are going to know what I'm talking about. Bicycle guys might not. I'm sure power lifters probably also know what I'm talking about. But between that and my back, the back was very simply just a matter of not having enough time to be able to spend that many hours on my bike. Again, coming off of surgery, I only had 2 months to get ready for Unbound. This was a opportunity that I got that came through some of the work I do. I normally do photography for the event. I have some really cool sponsors and teams that work with me. They helped me get the entry, so I knew it was a one in a lifetime experience. So I knew it was going to be a long day, but it was this entire day was just honestly a matter of not having enough time to prepare. But what was really cool was it was actually really easy to chunk the race because everyone, like if you're a long distance bike cyclist, you're in a group. We were in the peloton for 50 miles. I don't even remember the first 50 miles. It went by so quick and it was so much fun. And then from 50 to 70 to an aid station, and then from 70 to 112, I had a couple of things that happened. So we're kind of just chunking to get through that. So you're trying to just get to, mile 80, and then it's 20 to 100, and then from 100 to 112 you're there, and then from 112 you're rolling down, you're fresh to 130, and you're basically at 150, and then you're just clicking off 10 miles to 170 and 180, and then you're basically done 190, and then you're sprinting to 200. So it was a really easy race to chunk mentally. It was just a matter of having to keep getting crushed by these hills that never ended. And by the time I got to my last aid station at mile 50, I stopped at the water station at 112 because I was in rough shape. I was able to rehydrate, work my way through, get some sun lotion, drink a bottle, I think 2 bottles before I even rolled out. Probably took about 5 to 10 minutes at that aid station, which is a lot. But I knew if I didn't spend that time, I wasn't going to be able to finish the race. But by the time I got to 150, I was really bad. I was in bad shape. I sat down, ate, took my time. I knew my day was basically over and I was at my limit. So I made sure I did what I needed to be able to recuperate, get moving. I thought it was really funny. They were offering Tylenol at the last aid station. I didn't take any, but I thought it was a really funny thing that like everyone was doing that. Would have been cool to get a quick massage, but they didn't have any masseuses there, but they had food. The volunteers were so incredible. They had kids running up, grabbing your bike, cleaning your glasses, spraying you down with water, running to grab your food, everything you needed, bringing chairs to you if you needed them. I've done a lot of races. I volunteered. I was super impressed with how good the volunteers were helping out all the athletes for this. And then, like I said, at mile 150, it started to cool down by that point. Rolled out for an hour. Some clouds started coming out. Made it to 160 after a couple of quick climbs. And then the course really flattened down and started to get fast. I knew we only had about 2,000 feet of elevation left, maybe 2,500 to get to the finish line. And after having to climb 10,000, what was another 2? So those last 40 miles were really flat, really fast in all things considering. And my legs came back. My legs really were not the issue all day. It was really my back and my neck. So I was able to put down power. I was able to climb. I was able to fly on the bike. The last 20, 30 miles, I was pushing about 20 miles an hour, maybe 21 in fast sections on my own, solo efforts. There were people in pace lines that I was flying by on my own because I just wanted to get home at that point. I was kind of sick of being on my bike. And I remember the last 3 people I passed were in the pace line. 2 of them had tri-bar extensions. A girl was leading. She was pushing hard. This group was moving, and I seated in behind them, and I just had the legs to push, and I knew they were struggling. So I hopped out and took off by them and kind of just told everyone, because I've been yo-yoing with them for the last, so many miles, and just told them like, hey guys, awesome job. And 2 of them on point just turned and said it when I was flying by, and they were just like, damn, as they were sitting in aero and just couldn't keep up as I was dusting them. And at that point, every mental boost you can find, I knew my legs were good. The last two climbs were, there was this lake or reservoir, whatever it was a 500-foot climb. I remember rolling up to it and seeing it and just being like, what's another 500 feet? And I kind of just, I wasn't in my bailout gears. I was hammering up the hill. I think I was holding like 350 at that point at like mile 180 or something like that. So I was feeling really good about myself. Unfortunately, it was really dry and I ended up getting a nosebleed. I had to stop for another like 10, 15 minutes to get my nose to stop bleeding. And some people might say just ride without it. I have a really messed up nose from when I used to box. So this was not the kind of bleed that was going to clot and I was going to be able to move on. This was the kind of thing that was going to, I was going to be swallowing blood if I tried to keep moving. So I had to stop. I carry Afrin with me for that emergency situation when I'm working out. I was able to get it stopped. There were people on the side of the road who were able to get me a paper towel. So just another one of those things that was a little aggravating. Looking at my data, I think I had like an hour and a half of stops. We hit my goal of finishing the race in moving time in under 13 hours, but like even those last 60 miles, every 10 miles, every 8 to 10 miles, I had to stop to stretch out my back or my neck because it was just so bad that I couldn't push. And my legs wanted to, my heart rate showed me that I wanted to. It was just a matter of literally physically not being able to stay in that position without cramping. And if it was a matter of pain, trust me, I was hurting every 10 miles, trying to push for as long as I could. And it was just getting to the point where when you get that bad warning sign of it's about to go, that's why I was using the stop, telling myself that if it did cramp, it was what it was, and we were going to keep moving. Getting to the finish line, I had a decision to make when my nose started to bleed. I had enough time to really try to, and even before that, coming out of the last aid station, push to the finish and finish before the sun comes down, which is like one of the goals. And I remember the conversation I had with my coach, Ray Botello, about how nighttime finishes are really cool. And like, I love shooting nighttime finishes at Ironman. I love being behind the camera at that finish line. And we get really awesome photos coming across the line at night. And like the pros don't get that opportunity. And if you're fast, you don't get that opportunity. And I wasn't competing for anything. So my last like 40, 50 miles, I just said, you know what? You're here, you're in pain, you're not going to hit any of the goals that you would if you were in shape. Enjoy the accomplishment for even being able to get out and do this race this close after surgery, only being able to rehab and really ride a bike for 2 months. If we go back 10 weeks, I was still limping around and trying to get on a stationary bike with flat pedals, doing rehab exercises. So for me, I was like, if we get to a nighttime situation, make sure, slow down a little bit, don't cramp, don't crash, don't do anything stupid, 0 risks. And let's see if we can get a really cool nighttime photo. And I don't mean like I slowed down like an hour. I mean like if it was enough to get sunset versus dark, which is a 15-minute difference, slow down and get the night picture. And that's what I did. And it was actually kind of funny because my last like 8 to 10 minutes, the sun was coming down and there was a lot of trees and coverage. So it was so dark, I couldn't see. And I was being stubborn and just didn't want to stop to put my light on. So I was really just sending it in the dark and railing potholes everywhere I could, just hoping I didn't crash. So much for the no risk thing. And even there was a tunnel and I had my back flasher on, but I was really kind of basically only seeing in this pitch dark tunnel with just my flash from the back of the light carrying a little bit of like, hey, the walls are here, just get out of the tunnel. But it would have been cool to see the finish line. It's a much, much longer run to the finish than I thought. There's a big, heavy, steep 200-foot climb-ish getting to the finish, and I hammered up that. And then just sprinted to the finish line, and it was so fast, little downhill, so fun. If you were watching the race, you don't realize how fast that run to the finish is. That is a full-blown head of steam, probably 35 miles an hour if you can stand and crank pedals, maybe even a little bit faster. We might be pushing on just under 40. It's that fast. So when you see those guys sprinting to the line, they are moving to get there. And And then, of course, the finish line is just incredible. Anyone that's ever finished a race that's that hard and that long, it's just a really awesome experience. I saw all of my marathon photo friends at the finish line, so I was able to take some selfies with my friends who were taking pictures with the cameras, able to say hi to everyone. Thank you to Muck Off for running. Cleaning bikes after the race was such a nice thing because I was so worried about having to throw down the rental car and not being able to clean it off, and then like not having a hose at the hotel. I would have cleaned my bike off in the shower if I had to, but they were there. They were cleaning bikes. Everyone was running up to make sure you have what you needed and take stuff from you. You know, I can't say enough about how good the race was for being what it was and knowing what it is. Yes, not a lot of aid stations. Yes, not marked. Yes, not a lot of support out there. If something happens, you have to call people to come get you. But that's what the race is, and that's what it's supposed to be. And it was really a once in a lifetime experience. And honestly, I'm not a climber. I'm a sprinter. I'm heavy. I'm not made to be able to hit 12,000 feet of elevation game and hammer it over and over and over and over. I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to be a 150 pounds climber. I'm made for fast courses and being able to lay down power and being able to hit it more than once. So for me, would I do it again? I think, to be honest, I would rather do the 350 XL and go out for a full day excursion and try something different, or maybe do the 100 and try to go for time. I think for the 200, fully trained, fully healthy, I could definitely crack that 12-hour mark, no question about it. Maybe low 12s, maybe high 11s, or high 10s rather, maybe. You know, like I said, it's not a course for me, but it was really fun, and I feel very confident in my ankle now, and I'm ready to move on to the rest of the season and continue to try to rehab to be able to get my run legs back and try to work towards being able to run fast. So when people are thinking or asking about where my recovery is at, I still cannot run fast for me yet. So anyone that follows my times, you know what my times are and what I can run. Yes, I am under that, those milestone kind of running things. The half marathon is my thing. I am an under 90-minute marker. I'm not going to say by how much. Look at my Strava, Cody Curatolo. You can find me. We coach a lot of athletes. I'm not here to brag or, try to talk a lot about myself. I am a triathlete, so I do focus on that, not the running thing, but I'm nowhere even close to that right now. So until I can get there, we're going to stay bike heavy. We're going to keep moving, and we're going to keep rehabbing and working towards where I want to be. So that was my 200. So before we talk about the actual experience and the village and the tech stuff and the bike and the setup and all of that, Schyler, I know you were following me. So what were some of your reactions, and do you have any questions about my day or, anything like that?
Well, one, I just want to go ahead and tell everyone, me and Cody talk all the time. I did not get anywhere near that level of detailed breakdown of what was going on with it. But the funniest part of it I got was the end, how you were waiting for like going across the finish line, making it dark. This is something me and Cody argue about all the time. My thought is you should die of a heart attack through 2 feet after the finish line. Cody's like, no, you always have to pass with a smile. So as he's saying, I got to go get this nighttime photo, go on. I was like, oh, dear God, this dude, this guy, I can't even. But aside from that, the main thing like I wanted to ask, I listened to all of that, was just like how the heat was working. Because I know like when you're out in those fields like that or with all that gravel, it's like you're being cooked from the sun and you're being cooked from the ground. So I know that was going to be really rough. Also, just as I was watching the times go along, I remember pulling up the first time, like I waited 2 or 3 hours in the race where I checked the times, and I looked at your first split to the first, I forgot what it is, like every 25 miles ish, right there around. And I looked at like the average speed. I'm like, is he on crack? Like, why are they going so fast? And then like the next one was very similar, a little bit slower. I'm like, okay, cool. Things are calming down. Next one, a little bit slower, cool. And then you're like, it dropped off a cliff, and that's the only thing I see is times between these splits. I'm just watching that, going, what happened? Did you watch it start creeping up again? Did you watch it start going down again? I'm kind of like, I wonder what's going on. But yeah, now after I found out about the wrecks and the flats and all that, I'm like, okay, everything makes more sense now. Um, but yeah, the way you guys took off, I did not expect that from that field. Like the pros, yes, I expected them to take off like a bat out of hell. They're all their unbound blocks, which has basically become a meme at this point. But everyone else I thought would kind of settle in, get going like a normal, I don't know, like almost not even ultra marathon, but like
Hey,
marathon kind of
Schyler,
pace. Yeah.
Schyler, give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to pause this. Okay, so guys, we just had to take a break for a second. I was running into a little technical difficulty, but we're all set now. Me and Schyler were able to take a break. But yeah, so Sky, you were saying like we talk every day, and that's funny to hear that like even you were surprised at how hot we came out on that race. Like I am not joking, dude. I have never come out that hard for a 200, for not 200, but like a long distance race, even for the Gran Fondo, which was notoriously a fast race. Maryland is flat. So we came out hot trying to break that to make sure the group didn't get big. We came out so much harder than that and running on 45s or 50s or 2 1s, 57s. Like I could not believe the wattage we were throwing down to be able to carry that kind of speed. And for that matter, too, I watched what the pros did. It's a 200-mile race, and they were doing 27 miles an hour by the time they got to mile 20, while we were waiting for them. Like it was insane the pace of this race. And any pictures you see, I'm going to be posting some. There's one really cool picture of me getting to the top of the hill, and it's wrapping around, and it looks like a rolling hill. It was a 500-foot climb. It was not a rolling hill. Like pictures and video do not do that course justice. And yes, a lot of the hills were rolling, where you could drop down the hill at 30 and roll halfway up the other. But that's what it was. It was rolling halfway up the other side and still having to climb for another 75 to 100 foot. And there were times where you're just doing that repeatedly over and over and over, 5, 6, 7 hills, or climbing over one hill to see that you have 3 more to go. And it's big sky country, so you just see the hills that are coming forever. And yeah, dude, it was wild. I was shocked at how well mentally I did managing it. And again, for me, I think it was just such a focus on the pain in my back and my neck that I was just ignoring everything else. I don't know,
Well,
what else were you seeing? Because you were watching it live, so you were seeing what was happening in real time up front with the pros.
yeah. Well, see, the other thing when it comes to like the neck and back pain, I have horrible issues with that for my endurance races on a motorcycle. So I
Oh,
know that like we get that
you mean
point.
your broken neck you're talking about? How you shattered a vertebrae and kept racing for a season? That kind of
Yeah, and
pain?
it's still bothering me. Yeah, that's it. Well, I know how when that pain is kicking in and everything's locking up, like people don't understand. Like there's times you can't tuck and look up. You're stuck like this, just looking straight with a flat spine. That it's like the things that you find to focus on to help keep you going. Like for me it would be like a lap time, or to be like, hey, 2 more laps. So I make 2 more laps, then I can make 2 more laps. And you keep like adding it on. Like how much that helps you mentally, like to keep going. But also out there with like how you can see as far as you can, because that's something I noticed when I was watching on TV. I'm like, that is one probably motivating because you're kind of cool. I just got to keep on cruising, the whole Finding Nemo, just keep on swimming. But at the same time, it's probably kind of like, fuck, it's still going.
Oh, dude, it just did not end. And the worst part was you would get over a hill that was blocking your vision. Like there are times where you're just climbing a hill, and like to put in perspective how steep these hills were, you couldn't see over the hill and you couldn't see around the hill. You were
Mhm,
literally climbing this hill looking straight up into the sky. And that was
mhm.
a common occurrence where you're just staring at blue until you get to the top, and you're either looking straight down because what goes up must come down, or
Mhm.
in Kansas, it doesn't always come down. You are now seeing ahead to the next hill that you have to keep climbing up with no momentum. And some of the most brutal climbs, I remember there was this series, there was 3 or 4 hills where it was like that. And the elevation game was insane, where we were climbing and it was brutal, and we got a roller that you could get over, and then it was flat and long with just an increased vertical where you couldn't carry any speed into it, and we were climbing from the bottom. And I haven't looked at the data, so I don't know what the gradients were, but definitely well over 12.
Hey,
So
those
that's
slow creeping
insane.
climbs are the absolute worst. Because, like, oh, it's not that bad. And it just slowly keeps getting steeper. And you're like, oh, no, I'm almost there. Um,
No, they just didn't end. At no point did I think I was almost there. It was just like, and the worst part was because of my cramp in my right calf right at the beginning of the race, I couldn't stand to put down power. So every one of those hills, I had to stay seated in the saddle, and I couldn't stand to try to pedal because it lasted long enough that by the time my back was hurting and I wanted to stand, I couldn't put down power.
mm.
That cramp did, it was bad enough that I felt it until the next day. So it wasn't something that got better to the point that I could outperform it. It was there. I was just dealing with it for the rest of the race.
This is another thing, like, first, or I'll backtrack there. But the other thing, for people that haven't rode gravel, they don't understand that, like, the way the texture changes. Like if you have hard pack and dry, it could be one way fast. If it's slightly damp another way, it just feels like you're being sunk in. You have a flat tire, and it takes so much watts to just keep rolling even downhill. And then once you get to wet, I mean, sometimes it can be wet and fast. There's times it can be wet and it feels like you have a parachute. So going through all
Yeah.
of that while dealing with all those hills, because you guys had a lot of rain going into the event, made
Mm-hmm.
even worse.
Yeah. So, and we talked about them. We'll talk some more soon when we get to talking about tech and what we talked about in the village and setup and that kind of stuff. We'll get there in a minute, but yeah, there was just so many different variables, and we talked about that. The ground being different, being muddy, being loose, being hard packed, being kind of a mix of everything. I would have actually ran different tires, all things considering, if I was going to do it again. So we'll talk about that in a minute too. But like, yeah, for anyone that doesn't know Schyler, and I know a lot of people that are watching this might, he's a maniac. Used to be a Red Bull BMX guy. His idea of gravel. Schyler is the reason I got into gravel. Talked me into it. You really did. Like you talked me into all the bikes that I buy and all the irresponsible decisions I
I
make.
don't
This
actually
is the
ride
guy.
gravel.
Schyler doesn't ride gravel. He rides single track enduro. I wouldn't even call where you ride
Yeah.
XC sometimes, and he does it on a gravel bike. And that might sound a little far fetched, but he lives down in Virginia where they have that. And I'm from New Jersey, so like for me, my XC course and my flow courses will probably be considered enduro on the West Coast. But this man snapped a frame a couple of days ago, and
Honey ride.
yeah, and was riding whoop sections thinking they had a loose derailleur when his frame was ready to completely snap in half. So when we talk about the level of feel and the ability to outride what's underneath him, he's been doing this. He made a career out of doing this and earned a Red Bull helmet for it. So anyone that knows what that means, like your perspective on things is both more valid and more unrealistic than probably anyone I talk to.
Yeah, the amount of times I see your pictures like, hey, this is the trail ride today. You're like, dude, are you retarded?
So specifically, yeah, and then I gotta give the disclaimer that everyone, Schyler and me, grew up from motorcycle racing, so I know everyone's used to a very clear voice with me, and my stuff is clean. But Schyler is one of the biggest supporters of the Be Beautiful Foundation, and his daughter is one of our athletes. So if this man with 1,000 brain injuries and concussions uses language you don't like, one, he's a racer. Two, he's a pro BMX professional athlete. Part of the culture. I apologize in advance for his language, but I'm going to tell everyone right now, it's not going to stop, nor does it offend me or him. And if there's anyone in the world that deserves to be offended by language, it's him. So I promise you, this is a fun podcast. Do not mind anything that you hear that you don't like. We're not doing that today.
Yeah,
These are
sorry
two
about that,
friends
guys.
who made
It's
this
not
up.
the connotation that I wanted. Like it was not at all. I should say, "Are you dumb?"
And yes, they are. As I'm staring at that Be Beautiful sticker on your swing arm, which I still got to send you those that still haven't come in yet. They're still sitting in an envelope in my car that only need to be put in the mailbox.
That's all good.
But yeah, dude. So like the first 50 miles, 60 miles of this course were and especially mile 40 to 70 were a legit XC course. More guys were saying it. Even the sections like the helicopter didn't even pick up on video until mile 40 or 70, whatever it was. That was after we came through all the garbage that you would have been loving. I actually found the guy on Facebook that had the fat tire that I sent you. So me and Schyler were laughing about doing this on the fat tire bike with aero bars and having a fat XC, fat tri bike, which is being built. Everyone, I do have that bike sitting right over there that I can now start working on.
I was hoping that's what that wheel cover was for.
So that dude was flying and he was laughing, and you could tell he comes from that background. He sent it so hard. He was looking for mud puddles to hammer. Like I don't care. I know everyone was probably annoyed and everything else, but I was laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing I had ever seen. That was right after my crash, right as I was waiting. And like we had to chase him. We did not catch him until we were out of that section. It took like 8 to 10 miles before we saw him again. He was hitting it that hard because you have to remember, while we were all sliding and just trying not to crash, he was full send.
I think he had miles of traction and built-in suspension.
He was standing on the pedals, sending it through that section without a care in the world. It was awesome to see. It really was. I mean, fat tire bike, it was meant for that. Like he was in that section, sending it. And like when I say tech, the only signage that we had were signs that said technical terrain ahead. And it was like legitimate, like, do not send it here or you're going to crash. And we saw, as I said, one of the pros that went down. I don't know what happened, but it was in one of those sections. Like it was, even for me on a mount, like I wanted my mountain bike to be able to go through some of those sections. So it was not beginner friendly in those couple of areas, but you could lock in and get through them. And then, like I said, just speed.
I would say even Keegan Swenson, the guy who wins everything lifetime. Yeah, he crashed like 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's a rough course, and I kind of blame his choice of tires on that. He was running Ramblers, which are the worst tires I've ever ran. They have no grip. They skip around like crazy, and they are slow and hard as rocks. So I'm pretty sure Maxxis gave him a big check to do that. But
I was going to say, was he sponsored by them for that one?
Yeah, he is sponsored by them. So the Maxxis riders got a lot of flack because they refused to ride any of their gravel tires and only ran their mountain bike tires for the last couple of years. Well, this year, all of a sudden, they're only running the gravel tires, and they're all struggling. So, well,
okay. Yeah, so I mean, that's my recap for the race. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about in terms of the race, or should we get into like what was going on in the village and the overall experience and talk a little bit of tech?
No, you pretty much covered it pretty well. I honestly still can't wrap my head around how much you guys fuel nowadays. Like, I said, I come from ultra marathons also, and like we ate a lot doing that. But dear God, the amount you guys put down, I would not be able to handle that.
Well, dude, coaching, right? We talk about this all the time with our athletes. Ray taught me everything I know, and I
Mm,
pass that stuff down the line. I was actually just talking to I'm working with Joan Pena now,
mhm.
and he was
Yeah.
asking about that, and I was like, dude, do not try to eat like that. You're gonna throw it all straight back up. Like I have
Mhm.
been eating like a champ, trying to just get my gut ready to make sure I was going to be able to tolerate. But I do want to talk about a little bit with nutrition. So let me give just a really quick summary of what it was like coming in, and then let's talk village and tech, because
Yep.
nutrition is going to be a big piece I want to talk about. And tires, I want, like, that's why I want to talk to you, Sky. I want to talk about tires. I want to talk about bikes. I want to talk about some of the. I know you've been watching the tech shows. The GCN guys were there. I actually met them. They were super awesome. But so I'm from Jersey, so flying into Kansas. Um, you fly into Missouri International Airport, which is Kansas City. Um, which, funny story, my girlfriend actually made me freak out getting on the plane because everything was planned. I was good. It was just like super early flight for me because I wanted to get there. Then we ended up getting delayed because Newark Airport is a disaster right now. So I went out of LaGuardia, and of course my flight was the only one that got delayed. So I ended up not even getting to my hotel until like 12 p.m. I was supposed to be there at 8 p.m. With travel and everything else. Long story short, um, she tells me, you're going to Missouri, right? You're not going to Kansas. And I like lose my stuff as I'm getting onto the plane. I'm like, what? No. And then I looked, and yeah, Kansas City, Missouri is a half-hour drive away from Kansas, and
Mhm.
I was on my way to Emporia. So I was just laughing. I was like, no, dummy. Like, I'm flying into Kansas City, Missouri, but I'm going to Kansas. This was planned out way in advance. It's just like one of those things that caught my mind and freaked me out. But you fly into Kansas International. For anyone that does fly in there, be prepared. I was talking to someone. I landed at I think I landed at 9 o'clock p.m. Everything was closed. They said they just don't
Mhm.
get a lot of volume there. So if you're from a really populated area like I am, like if you go into LaGuardia or Newark, like everything's open 24 hours there. You can go to any place you want. You can always get food. So like I landed, I'm like, great. What am I even gonna do for dinner? Everything's closed. I ended up having to eat McDonald's that night, which was fine because I'm gonna talk about that in a minute too. Fast food and how to eat food, like eat nutritious stuff while you're out the best you can. Um, you fly in. Emporia, Kansas is about 2 hours and 10-minute drive from the airport. So my hotel was directly in the middle. I was an hour away from Emporia. So driving, stopped, got a burger. Protein is better than nothing. If you really want to be healthy, eat it with a lettuce wrap. Don't throw out the buns. I was taking in extra calories. I didn't care. I was getting ready to eat at do a giant race. But I get that question all the time, like, how do you eat, whatever. Like, McDonald's is fine, guys. If you're like, I'm not saying to eat it every day, but like, if you eat a healthy diet, you can eat a McDonald's burger and you can eat it in a lettuce wrap. Ask for, two things of lettuce and throw the buns out. Don't get the American cheese, which is just processed gunk. It's not even really cheese if you even know what it is. And don't put all that extra crap on it. It's not as bad as you think. And actually talk about like a nutrition amino acid profile, prime grass-fed beef versus what you're eating in the McDonald's patty is less than a 5% difference. You're basically getting the same thing. So when people talk about this stuff, it's like, well, are you eating, are you getting your basic protein in, and are you getting something nutritious in, or are you just eating garbage from candy while you're out? It's a very different thing. So for me, post race, like I ate great barbecue in Emporia. There were a couple spots that were awesome that I recommend going to. They're on my Instagram feed, the names of them. but there's like 4 or 5 different barbecue places there that were phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. Whenever I go to the Midwest or the South, barbecue is my thing because you can't really get good barbecue up north where I'm at. It's one of the few things we don't get really good at. So that's what I was eating. But after the fact, I had a Chipotle across the street from me. I didn't want anything else. I had this new Chipotle honey chicken that was so good. And instead of eating all the garbage that you can throw on top of it and having a 12,000 calorie bowl, white rice, chicken, and a little bit of pico de gallo for me because I want flavor. Tomatoes are empty calories. You're not going to get anything out of it. I don't do it with corn or anything because it's going to go right through you. And pre-base, I didn't want that. But and no fiber, so no vegetables or anything else with it. But none of the sour cream, none of the guac, which is actually fine, guacamole, get healthy fats. But again, post-race, my stomach was a mess. Just didn't want to deal with that. So just straight chicken and rice and a little bit of pico de gallo. Chipotles are everywhere. You can eat healthy. I would make that at home for dinner 10 nights a week. And there are tons of places like that. Like if you're out, find your nearest Mexican food place. It's going to be one of the healthiest things that you're going to find to eat. There's so many options. You don't have to, dilute it to, eating a Big Mac with everything on it with processed food and then having a giant Coke to go with it. And shots fired, but we're talking about trying to eat healthy while you're on the road because it is a challenge, but it's not really hard if you know what to order and what to look for. So long story short, showed up to the race the next day, ended up doing checked all my stuff in, ended up doing a shakedown ride with Alexei Vermeulen, who's now helping the under 23 crew in America and trying to build up cycling for those guys. So he's doing a lot of really cool stuff right now. I really liked him. Got to meet his dog.
I was about to mention the dog.
Really fun to just see him hammer a couple of hills just to shake his legs down. You're like, oh, that's what a pro athlete climbs a hill like. Different kind of thing. One of the things that I told you, Sky, was gravel bike riders, they're not like road riders. They're all big. Like Keegan, I saw him. I was expecting him to be this little thing, like a motorcycle racer. He's a normal sized dude.
Keegan does a lot of heavy weight work. He does a lot of gym work that a lot of people don't understand. Yeah.
I mean, it pays off. There's a reason for it. It's why he can go to the world stage and do what he does. But so that was cool too, just to see the gravel guys. They're rocking it a little bit different. But anyway, so the village. When I got to the village, check-in was awesome. They were doing their packet handouts, bib pickups at their Emporia Museum. It was cool. We got a little bit of swag. Got a T-shirt. Got a race mug. The medal. We got really cool medal. Actually, it's on my Instagram page. We got obviously our bibs, a bunch of coupons for the race to eat afterwards, bunch of samples, which is nice because a lot of races you don't really get a lot. So they gave us our chamois cream samples. They gave us a couple of meat sticks from a few of the ranches. Muck Off gave a lot of stuff out, so we got little bottles of cleaner and wax and lube and all this stuff. I think we got a little thing of Squirt too, which was really nice. I had those in my aid station bags. When I stopped at aid stations, I did relube my chains. Honestly, dude, after talking to Muck Off, I waxed my chain with the Silka wax pot. It worked, but when I was at the aid stations, I was using Muck Off wet lube. I don't know if that was the right move to use or not. One aid station, I threw more wax on it. I only had another sample of wet with me. So I threw that on the chain and we were running through water and stuff. So I don't know, maybe it worked. Maybe it pulled in more mud, but that chain got cleaned off enough times. I saw some really cool setups with some guys with syringes on the back of their bike with a little tube to the chain so that they would just reach behind them and hit the syringe and they would re-loop their chain every so many miles. I thought that was awesome. And then all the sponsors were there. So let's talk a little bit of tech.
I know you're going to talk about the best piece of tech, Keegan's wheels.
Let's start with wheels. I had a lot of conversations about wheels. Let's start with wheels. So to set some perspective, my bike, the Super Sex Evo, I am limited to 45s. So we went with 45s. We're testing 45s. This is only my second year in gravel. This is my first year racing gravel. Last year, I started on a Giant Revolt. It was a solid bike. Don't have a single negative thing to say about it. It was an aluminum bike. I was running Torino mixed 38s, which were measuring 40, 38. Then I went to 40s on Gravel King SKs. I think
I think they were SKs.
I'm actually looking at them right now. So yeah, I was running SKs. I'm actually going to grab them because they're right here. And I liked them. The little bit of tread, not a lot, but they worked. And then I ended up going to the 45s, which are these for tire size. And for me personally, the grip is good on these. It wasn't awe-inspiring, but it was good everywhere. It was actually more consistent. But because the grooves are so tight, they grab rocks and fling them. And you can just hear the little ting, 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 ting constantly. And I did maybe 100 miles with these before they drove me so crazy that I had to get rid of them and switch them out for my G1 RSs, which have semi-slick with big knobs on the edge. And when you do slide, like when I was in the mud, they shed mud, phenomenal. They're so fast. Riding on these after riding the SKs and the Torino mix is like what resistance? They just go. They work on the road phenomenal. They just work everywhere. This tire is so amazing. I can't talk enough about it. For Unbound, where it was super loose and muddy, and with my bike being limited to 45s, what I now know is that I could have actually ran a 50 up front. And when it comes to XC and dirt and gravel, you've been a huge help to me, Schyler, trying to figure out this learning curve because it's massive coming from the road. And trying to even understand what it all means took, the last 8 months trying to learn this stuff. I would have ran a 50 up front because it fits. And I would have had less clearance, but I would have had more than enough. And I would have ran the not the RS Pro, I would have ran the G1R, which is a mixed tire that has some tread up front. And it's not a lot of tread, but it's enough to make a difference. And it really doesn't slow you down. Looking at what I was doing on the 40 Torino mixes versus the 45 SKs, the times are not so dissimilar. If you have the fitness, you're not really going to lose anything from what you gain for the traction over the course of an actual race. Hard pack, go with the G1 RSs. It's the fastest tire for hard pack. You're basically riding on the road with you're riding on a slippery road that you can handle. Like, it's worth it. But for anything else, I would have ran the mix, which is interesting because I think you told me that the winner was running a mixed rear with a semi front. Is that true? Is that right?
That is, yeah. So he ran your preferred RS on the front, and he ran my preferred RX, the more aggressive mountain bike one, on the back, which typically you would run the more aggressive tire on the front. So you had more control. You'd run the faster tire on the back. That's general mountain bike logic. But going by how mud and powering up all those steep hills was the main priority, it makes sense. Like, I like it.
So I'm hearing some like dirt bike philosophy almost of if you have the bike handling skills, which I'm going to be honest, I don't. If you were on this course, you probably would have loved it. Yeah. Minus the 200 mile, you would have actually loved the techie stuff.
Yeah, I would need a year to get ready for 200 miles.
So what I'm thinking though is shifting weight to the rear, trying to grab traction and power through the rear and letting that front tire float. And if you have the control, I mean, motorcycle racing, right? Like when in doubt, power out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can almost see that working, and apparently it did work, right?
I want to say also, like, typically when you have confidence in the area and you know where you're riding, it's momentum that gets you through.
Mhm.
Well, when you don't know the area and a lot of it's, up in the air, like with the conditions and everything they had this year, you tend to go into it a little bit slower and have to power through, which normally on a bicycle is like a death nail. Like you need to carry momentum, you need to go fast into everything. So I guess having the extra traction in the back just gave him that confidence to be like, hey, if I need to slow up to see what's going on, I know I can
Mhm.
power through and hit the next section.
Okay. Yeah, so that's interesting. And like I even asked you, I think the other day, I think I shot you a text message, like, how do you handle mud sections? And you told me like power through. And I'll say it, like it works. It was working for me until I had crashes in front of me and didn't have the bike handling skills to get around it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the one slide out that I had, I wasn't even upset when I slid out because I knew what I did. I wasn't going fast enough. And I lost the front because I was going too slow. Because for me, I got nervous. I just got rattled, lost my
Mm-hmm.
confidence, and couldn't carry enough momentum to get through. And that was the only slide that I had. The other sections, I was good again. I knew what to do. I got right through it. But like, end of the day, if I was going to have picked ideal tires, if I had a bike that could have took anything I wanted, I don't regret running what I ran. I would have absolutely ran mountain bike tires. So I'm not sure what Schwably is running on their mountain bike tires, but I still would have wanted, for me, I would have wanted a mixed mountain bike tire up front. Like on my XC bike, I run the Mezcal Barzo Vitoria tires. I would have wanted something, something like that, something fast in the rear. I would have actually still ran a semi-slick in the rear. So if they make a Schwably G1 in a 55, I would have took that, and I would have ran a mixed tire up front without a doubt, like no question about it. If that would have been Victoria, whose tires I know, I probably would have ran the Mezcal up front and ran a semi-slick in the rear.
I'll say with Schwalbe, like if you had ran the RS in the back and then the RX in the front, that probably would have been perfect. But the RX has those giant side lugs, so
Yeah.
wherever it says it fits, it's always that extra bit bigger. Which running the Crux that I run is really hard for fitment because they say it only runs 47. So I run 50s in there with those giant side lugs, so I'm kind of running a little tight.
What's that new S-Works frame running? Same thing?
I'm hoping bigger because it's S Works, and dear God, it's ugly as fuck. So I'm kind of hoping it. I'm kind of hoping it could do a little more because I do not want to ride that paint job. But
The only guy that complains about getting an S-Works upgrade. Well, I mean, I don't even
red and
ride
gold are like
Specialized.
two colors I don't ever want to ride as a bike. Red and gold. It's got both of them. I'm like, but
I do know you hate the gold. I love gold on bikes.
I don't.
I love it.
No,
Well,
no.
I do have to say, I don't know if I told you this, but my Fat Boy is a Specialized. It is unmarked because I'm going to polish
Yeah, you
it,
can do that. Yep.
but it is a Specialized. So I guess I'm joining the dark side. But for everything that matters, I'm on Cannondale and they don't make a TT bike. So I got the Factor right behind me. Which,
Well, I'll say
oh,
if my frame wasn't going to be covered by warranty, I was going to be on Cannondale. Actually, yeah, probably Cannondale scalpel drop bar would actually fit me more
hard
than
to say. Yeah,
yeah
we're
what I'm running now.
figuring
But
out. So let's move on to the. Okay, so tires.
the wheel
So
talk.
So hold on. So let's finish out the tires. So end
Yeah.
of the day, mountain bike tires would have been the most ideal for multiple reasons. At the beginning of the race, again, everyone, I ended up losing the Peloton. Schyler, you saw it on the charts. Once you lose that Peloton on a gravel course, especially, your speed drops, 5, 6
Mhm.
miles. It is hard to hold that kind of without getting over the draft. So if I had the mountain bike tires, even if I had a 50 up front, I would have been more confident in being able to hit the edge and just watch YouTube videos. There's so many out there.
Mm-hmm.
Along that edge was all that chunky flint. I would have had the confidence to hit that to gain ground. And when that crash happened, I would have been by it because I would have been in the front peloton instead of the back. And that would have allowed me to not have to work as hard. And I would have been with that group longer. Now, of course, the great equalizer was mud. I'm not saying I wouldn't have still crashed. But my first crash did, in fact, happen because the guys in front of me were not going fast enough and checked up and crashed, and I did not have the skills to get around that crash. That front group that was riding faster with more confidence with all the guys that want to be up front where I want to be, we might have gotten through that. And if I didn't have that first crash, I wouldn't have been rattled, and maybe we get through that tech section unscathed. Maybe I crash anyway. We don't know. But definitely gravel tires would have been what I wanted for that race. The Parley I want can take them. So I know the new Super X does comfortably fit a 50, so maybe it can go bigger. I have to get a closer look at it.
Hey, the Lauf goes up to 2.4.
The Lauf, honestly, I have to take another good look at Factor because I'm also hearing that, I mean, I have one, and the tire clearance on that fork is insane. So it might take a lot bigger than we think it does. So, end of the day, the Schwably G1 is not known. And again, I'm running the new Pro that I love. I probably have 1,000 miles on those tires now. I have 2 sets of them. I got a new set for Unbound. The sets that I pulled off didn't have flats on them. I have 1 flat on 1,000 miles. And like, I'm hitting single track on my 80-mile training course. I'm hitting a solid 8 to 10 miles of single track where I'm bouncing off stuff, roots, sharp rocks. It runs across a river, so I'm riding across a riverbed. It is single track. And I'm not flatting these tires. So it's winning races with fast guys going over stuff. I cannot talk more positively about this tire. You are basically running the RX like it's a mountain bike, and you're not flatting anything.
Well, it's the other thing too. You know, when I ordered the 45s in the RX, and I realized the 50s would fit. You know how angry I was about it. I was literally trying to pop the 45s to give me an excuse to order the 50s. And it's the exact same carcass. The only difference is the tread on it. And I was literally hitting every single sharp edge and rock, and I'm well over 200 pounds trying to pop these tires, and they survived everything. I was kind of annoyed, and after a weekend of just ordering the 50s anyways.
Yeah, so that's a good point, too, for talking about tires and tire pressure. Let's get into that now. So I started the race at about 197, 198 pounds. I finished the race right around 185. I didn't check my weight until after I got to rehydrate, and I ended up staying because I was waiting for my bags to come back, and I didn't want to have to drive out the next morning, so I was able to eat and rehydrate a little bit before the next day. So I lost roughly 10-plus pounds during the day. I talked to a bunch of the tire guys, but I went to Schwably. Everyone else confirmed this. The Pirelli guys confirmed the same thing. The Vittoria guys confirmed the same thing. Schwably had one of their lead techs come out to talk to me. And my immediate first question was, hey, tire pressure, I'm using the SRAM guide and I'm using the Silka guide to determine my tire pressure. How accurate are those in your eyes, and what are your pros running? The lead tech weighed 185 pounds. He was 6'2". I'm 6 foot, walking around 195. He told me that they find the Silka tire pressure calculator reads 15 to 20% over what they feel tire pressure should be. And I could not believe how big that was. So for me, and I even told you, like, for what I'm used to, I was struggling getting used to running tire pressure so low because I've just been part of that high pressure and I'm heavy and I don't like feeling the tire and blah, blah, blah. And I was initially running 38. The recommendation was 36, 33, and I was running 38, 35 in my tires. He wanted me to go, underneath that came out to, so the recommendation was 36 in the rear. He wanted me to run 32, 31. The front tire was supposed to be 34. He wanted me at 30, 31. So go figure, on our practice day with Alexi, dummy here forgot to check his tire pressure when we rolled out. So
motorcycle racer, man.
I overinflate the night before so that I don't have to reflate in the morning. I just have to let tire air out. So I normally pump my tires up to like 40, 45 to get them ready for the next morning. So I had probably about 40 pounds of tire pressure, and I went, oh, shoot. We stopped at a light, and I just arbitrarily was letting out air out my tires. I checked my tire pressure when I got back to the hotel, and I had actually ridden the practice day at 30, 30.
Yeah.
But I knew, and it was wet, so like it made sense that I had good traction on lower pressure. But when I looked at the data, I wasn't struggling to go fast. So I knew running lower pressure was going to be okay. We just didn't know how low to go. And basically what was explained to me by Schwably was you want to run the lowest possible tire pressure you can to not rim strike. And they said it's not going to have a bearing on having to put down significant watts higher or rolling resistance, because on a difficult course like Unbound, the tire is going to be bouncing enough that what you lose in rolling resistance, you gain in traction when it comes to times. So he said, yeah, on a faster hard pack course, run 2 pounds higher, run, kind of right where it's at, run closer to 10% under. But a course like Unbound, he said, run that as low as you can to not rim strike. I ended up starting and what was cool, something I didn't expect from tire pressure, he then told me, and then go 2 pounds lower because your tires are going to heat up because it was going to be 90 degrees. And I honestly did not think that we were putting enough heat into bicycle tires that made a difference. So I ended up starting my day. Silka rear recommendation was 36 pounds. I started at 31. And in my front tire, recommendation was 34. And I started at 30. So I started at 30, 31 because I was afraid to drop in the 29. After the fact, racing everything else flat, blah, blah, blah. My rear tire, both of my tires ended up finishing at 30, 30 for the day. So my front tire held there. My rear tire, I'm going to have to look at. I might have got a little puncture right there somewhere else that got air, because at mile 90, when I got my flat, I put 33 pounds in it. That's what I was planning on running. That's where I wanted to be at. And I finished at 30. So I lost a little bit of air somewhere. But running basically 30, 30 solo efforts in those last 30 miles that were flat, and I was holding 20, 21 miles an hour solo without an issue, I am now convinced you can run lower pressure, and it is the proper thing to do on a gravel bike. And if you're running something that's a tough course, run it as low as you can. So like in my XC bikes, especially with the liners now, I'm already running what I thought was low. I'm probably going to try running a pound or two even lower now.
I'll say with tire pressure, like I run the RX. So I run the more aggressive version of the semi-slick. I'm 240 pounds, and I regularly run 24 in the front, 25 in the back. And you see on my Strava all the time, when I hit the road, I'm 20 miles an hour plus on my own, pushing my own air. Easily on the tops, not trying to hammer too much. But when I hit the trails, yes, I can still hit all the mountain bike stuff. When it comes to like the mountain bike side, when you go off-road, the guy that owns my shop's on an e-bike. Dude runs like 17 PSI in the back and like 14 in the front with no liner on an e-bike, and he's a heavy guy. So I'm like, after a while, you're kind of like, dude, maybe we can keep running lower. Even when the ride that I broke my frame on, I was riding around the mud, and I'm like, dude, I could actually get down into the teens. It would probably be perfectly fine.
So one more time, dude. What's your gravel bike pressure? What are you running?
So I run 24 in the front and 25 in the back on hard pack.
So Schwably, that tech, he told me that he typically runs, I'm trying to remember, he's right around there. At 185, I think he said he was running 29:31.
Yeah.
So he's basically there. And when I think about it, actually, for the first time, yeah, I finished my race at his weight because he was 10 pounds less and I lost 10 pounds. And I was basically on his pressure. And I think with Unbound, it's still a matter of having to manage the fast parts versus the slow parts. So I do think you still need to err on the higher end as opposed to the lower end because there is enough to be able to make up when it gets fast. But I think if I was going to run an especially difficult XC kind of course, yeah, you could definitely get lower, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. But the one thing with Unbound that really throws it all for a loop is the flint. Like,
yeah,
flint is sharp. I mean, it's what brought up early hominids for being able to cut everything. So, I mean, that stuff is not forgiving at all. You catch it at the right angle, or it's done.
Yeah. So, and let's talk about my decision too. So, I was coming down literally to the day of. I sent my tires up, literally the day before I got on the plane, and I was talking to you left and right about it. Watched the Soka videos about what a flat means and what a cut means, a puncture versus a cut and everything. And I ended up choosing with my shop, Ridgewood Cycle. We ended up going no liners because I did not feel that the same liners I use in my mountain bike to avoid rim strikes would help prevent a cut. And I wanted to be able to throw a tube in my tire if needed. And I didn't want to have to hassle with a liner. And I had no rim strike, maybe one rim strike. If I'm being honest, maybe one. And no problems, no cuts. I was really smart about all of my lines, except towards the end where I, hit a rut halfway through and I was tired. And towards the end when my eyes were really starting to dance and, try to stay hyper focused for, 13 hours, guys. Go for a car drive. Go drive your car for 13 hours. That's what I'm talking about. Every racer in the country knows what I'm talking about. So I have no regrets about not running a liner. I honestly would recommend not running a liner for this race. I think it just gets in the way. If you get a cut, there's nothing you can do, and the liner is not going to help you. And tire pressure wise, it was not necessary to, with the tire pressures absorbing the blows, you shouldn't have rim striked. I raced hard at 195. You saw the numbers. I was with the group. We were railing stops and potholes and everything else because when you're shoulder to shoulder, sometimes there's nowhere to go and you just got to stand on the pedals and crank over a pothole. Like, it just is what it is. What I will say that we haven't talked about and we didn't talk about leading up to this race, I think tire and rim choice is really important. I chose to we're going to talk about HED soon because I love them and I wish I could have ran the HED Ardenius for this, but I had already DT Swiss 540 wheels with the 370 hubs, and I'm rocking stainless steel Enduro bearings. I have Ridgewood Cycle, my mechanic Juan, who is the only one that touches my bikes there because he's absolutely phenomenal, and the shop owners are amazing, and the manager Elliot is amazing. I love those guys, and they told me, like, coming in, they were like, listen, you're rocking XC wheels, you have 2 extra spokes, these things are made to be bomb proof. XC, I've talked to you about XC and how crazy you guys go with that. So I didn't want to run a gravel tire. I wanted a tire. I wanted a rim that I knew I wasn't going to break. And I'm so happy I was on XC wheels because compared to their gravel wheel, so I'm running the C1800 C wheel, C for XC, as opposed to the 1800G for gravel. And the gravel wheels only weigh 100 grams less.
Mm-hmm.
That was the difference in my 25 versus my 24-ounce bottles on my bikes. So having those bomb-proof wheels, having Enduro, the best bearings you can put on the bike. Guys, I run stainless steel. I don't believe in ceramic bearings. I just don't.
No.
For me, bearings are replaceable. I didn't realize how many bearings are in wheels between the hubs. So I ended up doing all new bearings. So my wheels were literally like brand new factory wheels going into this race. And those 370 hubs, again, they're not anything special, but they are solid and they're bomb proof. Zero problems with my wheels the entire day. And like I said, I got one flat and it was in the middle of my tire. It's all I had to deal with. And I am running the original Silca sealant, thanks to you, Sky. That sealant is also, I'm honestly, like, for it sealing my tire valves, and I had to swap those out before the race, I'm absolutely astonished that it didn't seal the hole I had. But like I said, like, real quick, bacon strip, boom, it was done and it locked up immediately. It must have just been what it was and couldn't seal up. Like I said, maybe it cut one of those fibers that was.
Yeah, well, also because they use the carbon fiber, like little fibers
Yeah.
in there. Sometimes if it doesn't get enough on there, if it's a big enough hole, it can't. No matter what, no sealant is perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, dump enough. I always joke. I've told you this. Dump enough silica sealant into a wheel, you can make any wheel tubeless. And I did that twice this week with wheels that were not tubeless, no tubeless liners. I just dumped enough silica sealant in there, filled up, and kept spinning it. That went.
That's awesome. And yeah, like the confidence from that. Again, I was running orange sealant. They had their guys running it. A lot. They were there, setting stuff up. They gave us samples. I run it in my TT bikes. I'm going to be running it in my TT bikes because I don't want to have to clean wheels for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Silca sealant, though, guys, it's what I'm going to be running as I convert all of my wheels over. I'm definitely converting my mountain bike to it. I will be converting TT bike eventually. It's just one of those things.
Hey, it mixes well with orange seal. I'm just saying.
So, quick side note, because I have my Factor behind me. I met the owner of Factor. It was really cool. Same place I met, what's his name from GCN? Alex, who was in the race. I just walked in. I wanted to talk to them a little bit about the bikes. I want to see the Hanzo. I have the Slick behind me. That Hanzo is amazing. That bike is just so pretty. And this bike too is just like, it's insane. Like riding gravel bikes, prepping, doing all my work and riding on the gravel bike and the mountain bike. I took this out one day and this thing was like a rocket ship. Like it's insane to go from gravel to road. But yeah, so Factor, just really awesome owner. Yeah, I can't say enough positive things. They made this thing to be able to take down the top bikes that have dominated the brand, like Trek and Specialized and Cervelo, and like there were a lot of Factors out there going really fast. It has a massive tire clearance on it. Like again, Cannondale just fits me perfect. So I ride Cannondales. It's my road bike, but Cannondale no longer makes the super slice, and I can't find one. That's why I run the Factor as a TT bike, because I was just sick of Trek. If I'm just being honest, not a huge fan of their road bikes. I actually love the Madone, but the newest Madone doesn't look like an aero bike. It looks like a road bike. Throws me off. I don't like it. I love the speed concept, but Trek didn't want to work with me. I ride a
Trek's
super.
a lot more difficult to work with for aero and TT stuff. I have one of my customers, a regular guy, comes in. He is a 2-time national champion for biathlon, and he's like, dude, Trek honestly doesn't give a crap anymore. Their bike's kind of terrible nowadays. So same, he's on Factor, he's on the Honzo.
I mean, the new if I'm being honest, I love the way the new speed concept works. I would have loved to have had one. It's a fast bike. I actually know for a fact that bike fits me perfect. Maybe that's why it's so fast. It's one of two bikes that fit me perfectly. But getting that bike set up, the cost of it, you don't get spare parts, you don't get anything with it. They were just really difficult to work with. I ride a Super Caliper. A Gen 1 is my XC bike. I love it. I'm trying to get on Gen 2.
Mhm.
But it's the only thing I don't have that's not a Cannondale. It's probably going to end up becoming a Scalpel, if I'm being honest, or a Scott Plasma. I spoke to the Scott guys. Awesome. My owner rides a Scott, my bike shop owner, and it's amazing how light that bike feels. And literally now with the triple lock mechanism, it just does everything. Like, we don't know. I might end up on the Scott by the end of the year. We'll see. But for the TT bike, the Super Slice is still, if I could find one, even though it's 6 years old now, I'd be racing it because I think it's just such an awesome bike in every capacity. I've never gotten to ride one, but it gave me the freedom to get something different. I run a System 6 Cannondale road bike, which is a freaking rocket ship. That thing is amazing. If you ever get a chance to see it, I'll let you ride it.
Mhm.
And then my Super 6 Evo, we know I love the Super 6. So I got the gravel version. And again, guys, I'm not a climber, so I have the gravel Super 6 Evo. I don't need the road version because I have the System 6. And if I could have been on a Fat Boy and had the money to spend it, that would have been Cannondale too. But shout out to Factor, awesome owner, great bike. Thing works like a dream, and it doesn't just work everywhere like my Parley worked everywhere like a road bike. This Factor actually feels fast everywhere, and it goes fast too. Like tire clearance, everything on it. It was just made to beat everything. I'm very curious to see if I can get into that TT bike, how this thing runs. TT race this weekend. So let's get into wheels now, because that's what we were talking about is wheels. So I got to talk to Andrew Head from HED Wheels. Awesome guy. Can't say enough positive things about him. Huge supporter of the Be Beautiful Foundation, which means everything to me. I have left previous sponsors because they didn't want to support the Be Beautiful Foundation. So any of the companies that I talk about are huge supporters of the Be Beautiful Foundation. And Andrew Head from HED Wheels was like immediately into it, asking what he could do to help me out. All these sponsors are either helping out the Be Beautiful project by helping to promote us, sending products to help our athletes, donations in some cases. Like, all of our people are involved. That's the point. And they showed some new stuff. They have their new gravel tires that just came out, and they came out with two of them. One of them is called the Stillwater, which is the one that I remember, and I think Stillwater may be Badwater. Essentially, the only difference between them is one is an aero and one is not. They're both aluminum rims on carbon aerofoils covers. So I was talking to them about it, and their philosophy is they don't make carbon and never have made a carbon rim track because carbon just doesn't stop as well as aluminum. And they always offer their wheels in aluminum and carbon because for them, they want to be able to offer the comfort and ride and flexibility and serviceability of an aluminum track and just be able to print a carbon layover for the aero benefits, because in an aero tunnel, they perform exactly the same. So I have the Jet behind me, aero wheel, and it tests exactly the same as the Vanquish, which is a full carbon, because they both are aero covers. One just has an aluminum wheel versus a carbon wheel. I run the Jet, which is aluminum, not just because of price, but for long distance Ironman racing. I want to have the most comfortable wheel with a little bit of give, just because you're in that position for so long, as opposed to on my System 6, I run full carbon wheels because I'm looking for the stiffest wheel possible. So all of my wheels are in the process of getting converted over to HED. Here's what I'm going to say about HED wheels. I've ridden Reynolds. I have ridden DT Swiss. I'm looking around the room right now. I have ridden HED. I've ridden Alto. I've ridden Zips. I've ridden Ravels. The only thing that I haven't ridden major, I haven't ridden the newest cadets. I haven't run um see, like, I'm even trying to think who are other big name who's that guy?
It's a Sukiya.
Oh, it's Suki. Where's
Yeah,
Viv?
the big old demon dog.
For everyone, I'm in love with Schyler's uh
Little King Charles Spaniel.
there we go. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, so we got this big dog for me, but she loves my girlfriend. And then we got a little King Charles Spaniel for my girlfriend who is in love with me. So we had to switch up. But yeah, this is big old Sukiya,
I love
who just
Suki.
walked in and was like, "Hey, you need to give me attention."
Nothing wrong with that. Has their
Yeah.
priorities straight. So anyway, with HED Wheels, where I really get impressed is their bearings.
Mhm.
Low resistance. They just go forever, and they can take a beating and last. So it just checks every box I'm looking for. Um, Notably, might not be the lightest wheel out there among the premium brands. They are American made, which is a big thing. And again, they're bomb proof. Like, these things just work and they roll forever. One of the lowest resistant wheels I've ever felt. They've never held me up. I've never had a problem with anything. I love my HED Wheels, and they're an awesome company to work with. So for that reason, I'm switching everything over to HED. So
Well, so the other thing with HED Wheels too, you're talking about the compliance with them. That's like the big thing that's coming up in gravel, and most, I don't know, general riding. Everyone's starting to move away from let's build everything for a road cycling professional who wants
yeah, super
an
stiff.
absolutely rigid, horrible thing. Because everyone's starting to realize if the bike's more compliant, it's more comfortable, you can ride it longer, you can ride it faster, and Hedge is basically kind of a little ahead of the curve for it.
Yeah, and like serviceability and warranty, like their stuff is awesome. So great company to work for. But here was the interesting talk I had with them about this stuff. So they do a ton of testing. They do blowout tests. We've talked for me about road bike, how when you run tubeless, they limit you to 70 psi in a 28 tire, in a 25 tire, which on my wheels, I run Continental TTs on the road bike, and a 25 Continental TT on a HED jet wheel measures, and I think they're running 21 in inner diameter, or 22 maybe. It measures 27. So a 25 is really a 27, and a 28 is really a 30. On the 28s, you're capped at 70 psi. Well, ETRO or ERTRO, I'll let you describe it better, ERTGO or whatever it is, who's a national governing body that sets the limits for compliance and tolerance for PSI pressure that you're allowed to run. They from what my understanding is, they basically arbitrarily pick the number 75 as the limit, because internationally and across all the different countries and across all the different wheel manufacturers and tire manufacturers, they just agreed that 75 is what it is. And I think it comes out to 5 bar, which is an even number. They make it easy for everybody. And everybody kind of just agreed that that's what you could run safely on tires, and everyone fell into compliance. Well, couple of things. If we're talking tubes on these rims, all of HED's wheels are hooked because they prioritize safety, and they don't believe in running a hookless wheel that leads to blowouts and could damage their wheel liable. So they stay away from it. They run tubes up to 150 pound pressure on these rims and don't get blow-offs. So basically what I got literally told was, you're not blowing off a tire with a tube. Now, tubeless, slightly different story. they are legally not allowed to tell you that you can go above 75 pounds of pressure. We had talks, we did scenarios. Long story short, I will be assuming full liability and not under the recommendation or advisement of HED, will be trying out 5 pounds pressure in my TT wheels to go above the recommended safety compliance and trying 80 pounds of pressure in my wheels, specifically in my 25s that are measuring 27. And I, after talking to all of the tire guys and a couple of different wheel manufacturers and taking in all this knowledge, have zero reason to think that 80 pounds of pressure should be any problem. Now, my race this weekend, I will not be doing that. That is something I want to try and practice in a controlled setting to make sure we are safe. But as of right now, in theory, there is no reason to think that going 5 pounds over and running that 80 pounds of pressure, which is where I want to be, maybe even at 78, would cause me to have a blowout or be dangerous for the wheels. Now, when it comes to people asking about spoke tension, will it negatively impact spoke tension? Yes. Going above those pressures will decrease spoke tension. And when I asked one of their engineers about this, I had anyway, his response was yes, it will reduce spoke tension to an insignificant tolerance that you will not feel, nor will it impact the integrity of the wheel or your performance. So when you take in basically all of this knowledge, there is zero reason to think for someone like me that weighs 195 pounds, I can't get to that 80 pound pressure so I don't feel the wheel bouncing while I'm putting down big power, especially on climbs. I shouldn't have a blowout. It should be 1,000% safe to run, but it is outside legal limits, actual legally, so they can't legally recommend it. But I have essentially, through all of the knowledge that I was able to obtain, there is literally zero reason in the world, in theory, that I should have a blowout under any circumstance whatsoever, nor should it negatively impact or damage HED Wheels because of their safety standards and practices. So, yeah, something I'm definitely going to be testing is getting to where I want to be at. Now, notably, in the bigger tires, the 28s that actually measure 30, that are capped at 70, they did make a point of saying, do not run that tire above 75. The recommended is 70, and they felt very strongly about not going much higher than that without giving me a textbook example. I know that in a wider tire, the reason the pressure is lower is because the air actually takes up more space. So the amount of pressure being caused on the sidewalls, even though it's less air, 70 PSI versus 75, it's less air, but it's actually creating more pressure on the sidewall. So they were actually more cautious in the way they were talking about going with a wider tire with higher pressure. But they did say at the 25s that measure 28s, I was not getting a single inclination that I couldn't go higher if I wanted to take my own risk and try that. But yeah, so
that's what I was gonna say. Like, a lot of their standards are based on the bigger tire sizes, especially when it comes to like the hookless. Like, a lot of the hookless stuff is based on a lot of the bigger tires are designed for the wider rims. If you put them on a smaller rim, yes, they can go for a higher pressure. But if you want to put them on a wider one, yeah, they'll blow off at a lot less. So same with the road tires. Like 25, usually, even on hookless, you can jack those things up. But once you start getting into 28s and higher, you start having a lot more issues. Because we've legit a few times just tried to push it in the shop and air them up to see when they blow. And yeah, it's kind of shocking. Some of the bigger ones, when they do, the lower ones, yeah, you'll have other issues before they pop off.
So you're really more of my expert on this. I'm just loosely and probably very poorly regurgitating what was given to me and trying to decipher it. Because for me, for being one of the touchiest athletes in the world, I'm a dummy when it comes to riding a bike. Put something underneath me and I'll send it. It's the only sport that I can do that in, which is cool, but it does take away some of my stuff. Where I'm really good at is being able to give feedback. I might not understand or be able to tell you what I want, but if I have someone like you with me who's giving me different things, and we've kind of done this for ultra racing, where you'll hand me something and say, go out for a lap and come back and tell me what happens. I'm really good at being able to give that feedback. So what are your thoughts on some of what I was trying to get the point across with HED? What are you seeing in your shop? What are your thoughts on tire pressure, hookless versus tubeless? This is really where I want to hear about what you think about all of this kind of stuff and how we might start going in different directions in terms of how you and me are riding.
Well, I'll say when it comes to the wheels starting off, like the carbon versus aluminum, I know from switching from aluminum on my Crux to carbon, I had to go bigger tires when I put the carbon on because the aluminum has so much give. And when I was running 45s, they were fine. It didn't really bother me that much. I could go through some pretty aggressive trails, my aggressive trails on 45s, no worries. Once I had the carbon wheels, I had to go bigger tire. I had to get more give in there because it was fighting me a lot more, and I wasn't getting a lot of absorption from all of the ruts and the rocks and everything. So that's one thing. And also coming from TT and Ironman for you, a heavier wheel is a lot better. So I mean, keep that momentum going. It's when you have those steep inclines or steep not steep declines, but like aggressive exits out of turns, that's when you want the super light aggressive wheels. So a lot of times for the wheels, it just comes down to what you're doing, like what you needed to do. A little bit it comes down to just preference. Like, even though technically the carbon wheels are worse for me, I prefer them more because I kind of like how I can accelerate out of a turn, even though they kind of hamper me in air pressure and tire choice. I don't know. What's the next point?
So
I'm trying to think. I got stuck on the wheels. I'm like, dude, I'm just been thinking about wheels the whole time. Other than the fact that I keep thinking that wheel behind you should be on a fat tire bike.
It's coming. Well, that's my jet. I do have the easy covers, easy cover for anyone that needs some cheap alternative. You slap them on your wheels and you can convert any wheel to an aero wheel. Those are going to end up on the fat bike. So I do have the covers.
Yeah.
Those are absolutely going to end up on the fat bike. That's going to be fun when we get that one set up. But let's talk about hubs and bearings for a second, because I actually don't really understand these, and I know you know about enduro bearings. So talk to me a little bit about hubs and bearings, what's involved, why it's important for a race like Unbound.
Well, the big thing with bearings is a lot of people go, oh, I need ceramic. Like, ceramic's the best. They spin the fastest. Thing with ceramic is when they're new, they spin amazing. But the time it takes for them to wear down to where like a high quality steel bearing is, it's not very much. So odds are, if you were to go and throw like ceramic bearings in all your wheels and spend several $100s extra, by the time you've done your practice and your break-in to go do the race, you're on the same point as a high-end enduro bearing. So the big thing with enduro bearings is very high quality and the steel that they use for the races and the balls, and they keep everything out and they just last really long. Like I've been a big fan of enduro for a long time. I've even put them in my BMX bike, which actually, has very odd sizes because it's Odyssey and other brands. I've had to sit there and measure them out and call enduro and go, hey, I need this size to put them in there. And that thing takes unbelievable abuse and gets thrown in the back of the van and with no care given. So yeah, that's kind of my big thing with enduro bearings.
Okay, what about when you're building wheels for people, what kind of hubs do you like? So like for me, I had the DT Swiss 370 hubs. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the head hubs. So what's your take on hubs?
With hubs, I don't know. You can't ever go wrong with anything DT Swiss. The big thing I tell everyone is a lot of people get hooked on the engagement factor for the
Oh yeah.
cassette. Like, dude, the more engagement you have, the more drag you have when you're not pedaling. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a TT where you're constantly pedaling and you're never coasting, sure, get 100 million points of engagement. It's not going to matter one bit. If you're going and doing like a crit or you're doing a Grand Fondo, you don't need that much engagement because all that noise you're hearing that sounds awesome when it's freewheeling, that's drag. That's slowing you down. So I tend to kind of go less engagement for everyone else. A lot of engagement for TT guys. When it comes to mountain bike guys, you can't talk sense into any of them. They want it to be like, you know, a trials bike every time they go to pedal forward. They want the most, and they'll bitch every time that it's got so much drag going downhill. But yeah, you just got to deal with them. But yeah, for the most part, it's just about how much drag we want to build into it for what they're doing. So yeah.
Nice. So you just reminded me, actually, talking about engagement. When I was talking to Hub, one of the things we were talking about were the Pawls system versus the new Rachet systems.
Yep.
And they were describing to me that some of the wheels do, some of the newer wheels have Pawls, some of the newer wheels have Rachet, that you can actually switch them out and get either or. I know the Rachets are more expensive because supposedly they reduce wear. But I was talking to Andrew, and Andrew had seemed to tell me that the Pawls basically last forever, well over 10,000 miles. And he said they offer a little bit less drag. They're a little bit cheaper. And even though they wear faster, when they wear out, because I guess the Pawl is literally rubbing on the engagement piece, but it's not the engagement piece that's taking the abuse. The Pawl itself is what's designed to wear down. So he said all you do when it finally wears down and you're skipping 1 point of engagement every 100 pedals where it skips, said, you just slap a new freewheel on and it's like brand new. So I don't get it sounds more to me like a marketing thing about spending more money for a ratcheting set because I'm not hearing any problems at all running the Pawls system.
Yes, that's the big thing. Like, so the Rachet ones, it's a bunch of like gears pushed into each other all the time. They have springs on both sides, and it's just like fighting each other as they're rolling, which gives it that really cool sound. Everyone wants to do the Freehub sound check and spin it, and you hear the crazy noise.
It does sound great.
Exactly. It sounds great. That's garbage. So the thing with a Pawl is it's just a couple of different little levers that are pointing up with a spring underneath it. So the one thing that wears out is that little edge on that lever. The actual hub itself is fine. So when you wear out like a ratchet system, you're wearing out the hub itself. When you wear out a Pawl system, you're just wearing out the free hub. So when it gets too worn, yeah, you just throw the free hub out. I mean, at most, the most expensive free hubs, $100. Pop that back in, your wheel is still good to go. So it's not a worry.
So if you wear them on a ratchet system, you actually have to replace basically like the whole hub.
Yes. So some companies have a like screwed in ratchet that goes into the hub. I'm kind of ridiculously strong. There is no way you can loosen that thing up to remove it without destroying the hub or the spokes. Like I've broken spokes trying to remove those things, and the customer's always like, "Oh, well, the company said you can just unscrew it." And I'm like, "You can't. You just can't." We can send it back to Zip, but strangely, the hub that comes back doesn't have all the scratches on it that we sent out. So yeah. And when we send it out to Zip, that money, it kind of pays for a new hub.
Yeah, so now that I think about that, actually, one of my Shimano mountain bike wheels, I blew out the hub on it. It was damaged, and I just finished it off. And yeah, I remember them saying like if I wanted to keep the wheel, I was going to have to replace the whole hub, and it was a cheap wheel. So I was like, well, if that's the case, I'm just going to throw the thing out, and that's what I
Yeah.
did. And I went and got new wheels. So one more for the Paul hubs. I mean, I've replaced
Yeah.
those myself. That's not a big deal or a big job at all. I mean, you gave me enough tutorials over the winter that I can do all the basic maintenance. So yeah, one more win for Pawls. I'm not a big fan of the ratchet stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Ratchet. But also, if people really wanted to go like most efficient for rolling, they would go free coaster.
What's
So,
that?
like my BMX bike, the free coaster on it, it completely disengages when you stop pedaling. So it's like having two front wheels. But
So
the
what?
yeah, so it's got like a screw system that screws into the rear wheel when you start pedaling forward. So when I want to go backwards, all I have to do is just pedal backwards right before I go and do the trick. And then it's like having two front wheels. It doesn't engage at all. So with that bike, I can actually take half a crank and roll farther than I can with my uber expensive, crazy wild, all the bells and whistles gravel bike. I
But
can go farther rolling like that than I can with my road bike.
but you couldn't put that on like a road bike or a mountain bike, could you?
No, because they don't make it for those.
Okay. You
Everyone wants the Pawls. They want the instant engagement. Yeah, because the thing
yeah.
with this is it takes a little bit farther to engage, but it's still a 16th of a rotation of your crank arm till it
Yes.
catches. So I
But
can still do brakeless tail taps and like land on the back wheel and stall, but once I start pedaling, nothing is attached. I just roll forever.
well, we gotta get you in an engineering studio. Okay. So so that's my take on wheels then. It was really interesting to hear some of the stuff there. Um, I want to talk a little bit about. Well, I want to talk a little bit about because I'm looking at my Silka sealant right now. I want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about not sealants. I want to talk a little bit about chain lubes because you and
yeah.
me spent a lot of time talking about this, and I spoke to a bunch of guys out there. Muck off was the most impressive. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned there. So traditionally, all of my bikes have used, when I started, I was just using regular wet lube,
Mhm.
regular typical grease that came in a little bottle, um, dry lube for chains. Then I found out about wax and wax emulsions. I used to initially race Ironman on ceramic speed UFO chains because they were supposedly the fastest thing out there. And honestly, yeah, every time I would go from my typical grease chain to that wax chain on race day, I felt a difference.
Mhm.
Um, I was finding that the ceramic speed chains were lasting me basically 150 miles. I would do a full distance Ironman, and then I knew I had 170.3 out of it, and then that chain was done. I had
Yeah.
to be max for regular stuff. I don't care what anyone says about them lasting forever. I know my bikes; they get washed and cleaned after every time I ride. Um, so then I started using Squirt Lube, which works amazing, but makes such a mess that I'm just tired of it. And I've told
Mhm.
you this, and then you got me into trying to wax my own chain. And I did that for the first time. And I used the Silka Secret Wax with an endurance chip.
Mhm.
And I mean, it lasted the race.
Mhm.
Unbound beat up chains. I was throwing squirt on top of that. I was throwing, not squirt, yeah, squirt. And then I threw muck off ceramic. I don't know if any of it stuck, but it was better to try than to not have it.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced that last 500 miles, like everyone says, and I'm not convinced that even Richard, whose opinion I highly value as a national rider, I'm still going to say about 200 miles to a rewax. And whether I'm rewaxing it or just throwing more squirt lube on top of it and waxing it with a wax emulsion, which is probably what I'll do. And yeah, did it work? Yeah. Did it feel like it was as good as ceramic speed, to be honest, I don't know. I was running it on gravel. I think
Yeah.
my chain was not an
You have a lot
issue.
of extra drag.
Yeah, I think my chain was not an issue. My chain's filthy right now because I did throw additional grease lube on top of it just to try to get something in there. So the real test is gonna be when I wax my road bike and I take it out on the road bike and I can give an honest opinion. I'm gonna run the same stuff with the endurance chip. I'm not gonna do the speed wax or whatever. I don't care enough.
Yeah.
I think it's a
And
really
speed
good
wax is only
product.
good for 5 hours, so.
Yeah, I think it's a really good product, but I think I'm still going to be waxing my chain after 150 miles. I think I'm still going to throw squirt lube on top of it.
Mhm.
Um, or maybe I'll try the Silica Sealant emulsion wax. That's my take. Now, I did have an interesting conversation with the Muck Off guys. They did have racers who were using their ceramic, drip lube.
Mhm.
They Their stuff is the wax-based drip lube. They don't believe in doing a full immersion wax like the pot because their
Yeah.
take on it was what they found was even the way that you lay your chain in that pot is really important. And if it's
Hmm.
folded up on top of itself, the wax actually doesn't get in as effectively. So when you take your wax out and the way it drips after before it dries creates inconsistencies in the chain. So the actual art of putting your chain in that pot is a thing,
Yep.
and they're all about consistency. And they find that wax emulsions are more consistent. Now their ceramic speed wax or their ceramic wax is actually vegetable based, which is
Hmm.
different than other manufacturers. So that adds something a little different to it. Um,
Well, Muckout was always environmentally friendly with
yeah,
everything.
but
So.
what I found really interesting, they offer something called their ludicrous chain wax.
Hmm.
That's petroleum based. And what they said is that for my TT racing, they had no one using it for Unbound. They were using the regular dry stuff, the ceramic stuff. But they said their ludicrous wax for short distance racing, maybe 73, maybe 70.3 down, probably more Olympic down, 20 miles or less. TT
Yeah.
racing, sprint racing, crit racing, stuff like that. That chain is actually faster than the wax chain because it offers the least amount of resistance. And that's something I'm considering trying. I might, if I get into TT racing, I might actually start carrying with me a fully immersed ludicrous chain that's petroleum based to just reduce, looking for minimal gains where it really matters for short
Mhm.
distance all out efforts.
Well, I can't remember the guy's name. He's an Australian dude. He has does like testing for chains and lubricants and all that. And the main thing that he found was whether you do wax or high end lube, the main thing that affected it was how you applied it. So what he found out is if you had a really good lube, but you did a full immersion into it, it would perform almost as good as a wax. But the
Mm-hmm.
big thing with a wax was if you're doing gravel or off road, its ability to repel dirt
Yes.
was was kind of its big plus, which is why it's a good thing. Um, like yeah, I kept talking you into it, and you were not happy about that. But
It
the one
worked.
thing that I found was even before I did the endurance chip, I only had to re-wax once a month, and I rode in all conditions: snow, rain, dry, everything on mountain bike trails. Once I did the endurance wax, honestly, it didn't really get a whole lot better. But I haven't really been able to test it outside of downpour and slop. So,
Well,
um,
and Muckoff was really adamant that water breaks down the wax very
yep,
quickly to
it
the point
does.
that they were concerned about even lasting over the course of Unbound.
Mhm.
So for me, the wax isn't, it's not that I don't like wax, it's that I'm not buying how long it lasts. I think it's
Mhm.
extremely effective. That's why I use the immersions. Um, it works really well. I think it helps prevent cassette wear, which is really important. Especially I run SRAM with built-in power meters, so that means something to me. Being able to preserve my equipment. I have race chains and practice chains. All of my stuff is dialed in. I'm just not buying how long it lasts. If anything, I wax too much, but it's not that I'm over waxing. I meticulously put one drop per chain link. On one of those annoying people that does that. I don't
Yeah.
just spin the chain and hold it down because of how much a mess that the squirt makes. So
Mhm.
for me, even when I brought my bike to my chain shop, they're like, "Your chain is dry," and I'm like, "It's not dry. I just finished cleaning it
I use the right
after."
amount.
Yeah, I did the right amount, and I just finished cleaning it after a 100-mile ride. It's not going to last more than that with what I put
Yeah.
on because I used to overwax and it would gunk up my roller so bad that I couldn't use it. Now I barely have to clean my pulleys because I'm always using the right amount. I've practiced it enough on the road bikes. And again, my average ride is 80 miles. Otherwise I'm on the trainer doing a recovery ride. If I'm outside going for a ride, it's an 80-mile ride. So for me, my problem with the pot is I can't be taking off my chain every other ride just to wax it, which is why I love the emulsions. But for race day, yeah, and for anything gravel, absolutely. So it's not that I'm not a fan of wax. It's it's like tubeless. I hate sealant not because it doesn't work, because I love tire testing and I use tires and I like to rotate tires and I like having it's just my habit from racing motorcycles. I
Mhm.
rotate all of my equipment and you can't do that with tubeless. So like even right now I'm annoyed. I have brand new tires from Unbound and I want to take those off and I want to put back on what I was practicing with and I want to use those as race day tires. But obviously, I have a puncture, so I'll probably use my front tire that I had, you know, maybe 1,000 miles. It's probably less than that. That tire still looks really good, my front tire, and I'll just use my two front tires as like race day tires or something.
I
I
say
don't.
on the chain front, like Richard, the fast kid I work with,
Yeah.
um, he's all about the wax, except his road bike. His road bike is where he goes to put miles in. So every time he goes on his road bike, it's 4 to 5 hours,
Yep.
6 hours, long rides. He will wax that chain, but he will lube it in between, so that way he doesn't keep waxing it all the time. Mountain
So,
bike and gravel bike, different story. They're waxed every time.
so long story short, though, it is okay to put emulsion wax on top of that lube. On
Yep.
top of it.
Even Silka says it's okay to do that.
Now, here's the only question that I'm curious about. Is it so I waxed it with the Silka wax? Is it okay to
Mhm.
put squirt lube on top of that, or should I really be using the Silka emulsion?
No, you can use a squirt, but here's the thing with squirt that a lot of people don't get, and dear God, it ruins my sonic cleaner at work all the effing time. Sorry, I'm trying to work on language, but um, you only have to do one drop per roller with it. I have so many people bring their bikes in with completely caked up drivetrains where the pulley wheels don't roll, the chain barely moves, and like, well, you squirt, and everyone says so fast. I'm like, cool, you don't dump it on there like it's paint.
I
You
mean,
just
in fairness, I need to put that on the bottle because I learned that the hard way too.
yeah. And even after it goes through an hour in the sonic cleaner, you still just take it out and scrub it. And I've still gone out back and power washed it. Like that's how much that stuff cakes on.
Oh, I believe it, dude, 100%. Um, Also, for anyone using it, like before every race I do, I take my pulley wheels apart, and I deep clean everything. I take
Mhm.
apart my cranksets and clean my chain rings. Like for me, I respect racing. Again, motorcycle thing. I like going into race day. A clean bike is a fast bike. So just water. If you just run your sink hot, and you're using squirt, that stuff that gunks up, just with your fingers, just get in there and it'll rub straight off. And then after I do that, then I clean it with soap and I get it like meticulously clean. I haven't taken my pulley wheels apart. I do have the little ceramic speed bottle that comes with your extra size pulley wheels. So anyone running SRAM, the nice thing about the SRAM Force and Redline, your pulleys are sealed bearings. So I will take those apart, put a couple drops of the ceramic speed lube in it, and I make sure even all of my pulley wheels are going as free as they can. Yeah, the Force and the red stuff doesn't rotate as nice as the ceramic speed ceramic bearings, but like more than good enough. I'm not gaining anything because those pulleys spin faster than what I'm ever gonna push through the chain rings. So when you see those wheels spinning that fast, that's faster than what you can pedal. So it really doesn't matter.
Plus, depending on like your chain that you use and the lube that you use, those pulleys will never be able to exploit that.
Yeah.
It's the one thing a lot of people put out, especially because, as bad as it sounds, especially with SRAM, they're flat top chains, not very efficient. And the best thing about Shimano is they used to be way better, but for some reason, they just aren't anymore.
If I could be running KMC chains, I would, but I'm stuck on flat tops right now, so that's what I run. I have SRAM everything. We're not going to hate on SRAM right now, but there's room for improvement. Here's what I'll say. If you're not an avid racer and you're on a budget, SRAM is nice. The wireless stuff is nice. I personally have a vendetta against Bluetooth. So I'm going to be biased no matter what. I just don't like Bluetooth in anything I do. Even setting up this podcast, I got annoyed. What I don't like about SRAM is that they have taken a conservative approach to durability and component wear. Their stuff is built to last at a performance deficit. So anyone that's fast, that knows SRAM, like on my road chain rings, they have this weird ramp thing in the cassette where the chain doesn't move until it lines up with that ramp, and that's built in to save your cassette wear. For me, all of these components are wearable and should be replaced after time. So I don't see, and that even the amount of time it takes to actually wear those things out is more than what most people ride their bike. So for me, it's really a marketing ploy, because if you actually ride your bike a lot, you're going to wear these things out, and you can do things to prevent it. Like you can rotate your chains, and you can rotate.
Just monitor your chain. Once it starts to get too worn, get another one. Your drivetrain will be fine.
Well, so I learned very early on about, and even for motorcycle racing, I learned this, chain rotation. So so let me try to explain it the best I can. You can clean it up if I botch it. If you run on your bicycle a chain for 1,000 miles, your chain has now worn 1,000 miles, because the rollers are what get worn down. And when those get worn down, it creates play, and that play of your chain shaking creates the wear that happens on your chain ring and your cassette. You know, bouncing around is what actually wears down your chain rings and your cassette. So when you have a fresh chain, it's nice and tight. It's not wearing anything down. That's also why we lube our chains. So once you have 1,000 miles on your chain, you have 1,000 miles of wear on the chain, and you have 1,000 miles of wear amount that's going to bounce around the cassette. So what you do is now you've caused 1,000 miles of wear on the chain, the cassette, and the chain ring. So at this point, the whole drivetrain has 1,000 miles of wear. When you throw a new chain on it, the chain's brand new, so it's not wearing down your cassette or the chain rings. So you can do now an entire new 1,000 miles on that chain before it wears down the system anymore. And once you get to 1,001 miles, that's when the chainring and the cassettes start to wear down more. So ideally for me, I always have a race chain and a practice chain. And now I'm considering throwing a third chain into the ring. That way I can run 3,000 miles before my before my drivetrain starts to get worn down. Because I'll have 1,000 miles on one chain, 1,000 miles on the second chain, and then 1,000 miles on the third chain before it starts to wear down any of my systems. And that's how your chain impacts your drivetrain. Did I explain that right?
So, yeah, very close. So, like, the big thing with it is as a chain wears, it stretches. And that stretch causes it to start to eat into the teeth on the cassette and the cranks. So that's what causes the teeth to wear out and start to wear on the cassette. Mm-hmm. So the big thing is, like, if you were completely insane and every single time you rode your bike, you came back and you cleaned your chain and you lubed it, it could go for 2,000 miles and never cause any wear and never wear out.
And just honestly, to be clear, it's the rollers on the chain that wear out. The chain doesn't actually stretch.
Yeah, it's where the pins go through the plates and where the rollers are. That's the part that actually wears out. So, like, I work at a bike shop. I have a lot of downtime, especially in the winter. I will take my chain apart, sonic clean it, re-wax it, throw it back on once a week, every 2 weeks for absolutely no reason other than I have nothing to do. So my chain still wears or still measures exactly the same as it did when it was brand new last November. So 8 months in, I'm still at the exact same amount of wear. And like I said, I ride on sand, dirt, and 6 days a week on that.
Yeah, so you're getting like the absolute minimum chain wear possible.
Exactly. There's times I've come in and my bike is bright pink and purple. I've come in and my bike was brown. There was no pink or purple visible. The entire drivetrain was coated. Wash everything, go ahead, degrease it, throw it in the sonic cleaner, re-wax it, throw it back on. No chain wear. So that's the big thing with chains, is just being like unbelievably insane with cleaning it and lubing it. It'll go forever. But when you're a normal person who doesn't have that time and can't go ahead and do that all the time, like also my friend Richard, who I work with, he is a UCI level athlete. Even at that, he doesn't have the time to go and do that always. So he rotates chains. He has to go through them. He found that on his road bike, where he does the majority of his long endurance miles, he waxes it once a month, and then he lubes it in between, then waxes it again to keep the chain going. He still ends up having to replace a chain every 4 to 5 months.
Dude, that kid works at your shop. Clean his chain for him.
We do, but he's only there a couple days every now and then.
Okay, fair enough.
The thing with him is he's mountain bike and he's road. Or now he's road.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, when you're his first ever road race for like actual road race was national championships, and he got 25th.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So
and he's like, yeah, I did okay in the race over the weekend in West Virginia.
Well, that's Richard. Sounds like a cool guy. I hope I get to meet him soon. And then also, like, if you're fortunate, so like, I have a lot of different disciplines, so I get to rotate my bikes. I'm very fortunate that, I came from motorcycle racing, got on the triathlon, realized it was like the same expenses to do this, which is absolutely insane. So like, I had a bike like you had behind you. I had two of them at one point. So I get to rotate my bikes, so it helps me, and I get to rotate my cassettes. I have 2 baller rocker board trainers set up in my pain cave. So like, I'm constantly rotating equipment, and I like working on my stuff. I have a very small circle of people that are allowed to touch my stuff just for trust issues, because I've had that happen to me. But yeah, so the point is, take care of your stuff. The only thing that I don't do that I learned how to do that's just not worth it for me anyway, I let my shop bleed the brakes on my bikes. It's just not. You remember what a headache I had trying to learn how to do that. I thought it was a simple process, at least for SRAM. My stuff was always over pressurized or something was wrong or I couldn't get. I've gotten much better at adjusting my calipers. I can get those almost always now.
Mhm.
At this point, I just let my shop do that for me. I'd rather throw them the business.
I would say bleeding brakes is the worst part of modern bicycles. Like bleeding a brake, especially if it's SRAM, could take 5 minutes. It could take 2 hours. And then you turn around. Shimano is the absolute best for bleeding, but even then, it could take 5 minutes. It could take 2 hours. Like, it's the one part I absolutely dread at work because it could
Yeah,
be thing. You could be pumping back and forth, and dear God, if you have something odd like Magura or Hayes, I hate you for bringing your bike in.
I'm not running those systems anymore. So, yeah, I'll be. It's the one thing that's like a mess. I have all the stuff. I could do it.
Mm,
Like, I would do it on my fat bike. Like,
yeah.
that, I don't care. I'm not going to spend money on that. That's my fun toy. I'll be bleeding the brakes on that guy. But all my bikes that matter, I'm going to let the shop take care of those for me. Um, yeah, I was talking with some of the guys we're working with, like, just take care of your bikes, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So I also want to talk a little bit about nutrition because I know it's wild for you. So shout out to Scratch Lab, shout out to Honey Singer. Honey Singer are the only gels I trust on race day. There's also Untapped, which is straight maple. So if you like honey, use Honey Singer. It's you're literally eating a packet of honey with a little bit of citric acid and electrolytes in it to help you digest and actually absorb the material. Untapped is the same thing, but instead of honey, it's maple. I brought with me 32 gels. I ended up going through. I ended up. So I brought with me 36 gels. I ended up only bringing 20 because, for the sake of the amount of gels that I had to carry, I ended up talking with the guys at Precision Nutrition, who I've been hearing about. Haven't used. They haven't been at any of my race days. They haven't been at any of the Ironman events that I've been at yet. And had a really cool talk with one of their guys. He ended up throwing me a bunch of stuff. I ended up buying a bunch of stuff. But what stood out was they essentially make these jelly bars. It's just like a gel cube that you would take. But I'm really big on having bare bones nutrition and very clean nutrition. I get very nervous to take stuff because of what happened to my stomach and ended up having to get an endoscopy and surgery and all this stuff. It wasn't fun. So even though Animal Pack throws some extra stuff in there, it's all good stuff and clean, and they test all their stuff and make sure that it's not contaminated. A couple other companies do that I've used in the past that weren't bad. Like Isopure was a good one. I like supplements; they're a good one. Um, again, Animal Pack takes care of me, so I use them for everything. Untapped is great. Scratch Labs, I learned so much from their nutritionists, working with them, talking to them as a company. They really work with me to make sure I get what I need and can be able to afford it. So, I'm loyal to them. I don't care what anyone says. I know a ton of pros use them. They're massive in the ultra world. And a lot of people you think are sponsored by others are actually still using Scratch Labs off camera. So
Have really awesome cookbooks too for like daily use that are
oh yeah,
amazing.
I got you on Scratch Labs too. Yeah, I mean their food is awesome. Everything tastes amazing. I can't talk highly enough. But getting back to precision nutrition, bare bones. When I say bare bones, they're using like it. It was like it was like I forget which carb they're using, but like it wasn't maltodextrin. Um, it was a complex carbohydrate that I just can't think of off the top of my head. Maybe it was a branch chain carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then a little bit of citric acid to help absorb it, and then starch to bind everything together. It was like a straight sugar cube that was easy to digest. And they made it in 60-gram bars. So instead of having to carry 3 gels, I could just carry 1 bar, which made it really easy for me. So I did have my honey singers with me, but I also took some space with the cubes, and I really liked it. Didn't make me sick, was able to get them down. I did the math after the fact. Again, I was using Scratch Labs in my stuff. I did not use Precision Nutrition, anything else, because I was very surprised when I talked to them. And I talked to a couple other people in the nutrition world. My first question, whenever I ask nutrition, everyone swears by whoever they swear by. Even Martin, I asked, because I use them for caffeine gels when I'm in a bind. Scratch Labs uses a 3-to-1 fructose to glucose ratio for a reason. I'm pretty sure it's 3-to-1. If it's a little bit off 3-to-1, the ratio that they use is on point, and it's supported by a ridiculous amount of science. And you can look up the numbers. If I'm botching them, it's fine. Their ratio is the golden ratio for what you can actually absorb from a cellular nutrition perspective. So no, I'm not a nutritionist. No, I'm not a dietitian. Yes, I did study biology and cell biology, and neurobiology was my field of expertise through psychology and neuroscience, and ran all these labs. So long story short, I can read science. I was trained to be a scientist. So when I talk to people about this stuff, I don't talk to them like a consumer. I talk to them about ratios and science and absorption and what's going on in the cell. Precision Nutrition was using a 1-to-1 ratio, which kind of threw me off. I was really surprised by that for as on point as they were with the gels. So do what you want with that information. I'm not changing my liquid nutrition. I'm staying Scratch Labs because I know what works. I use their super carb. I use 2 scoops, and then I use 2 scoops of their hydration mix to get an ideal ratio of fructose to glucose and branched chain complex carbohydrates. Long story short, Precision Nutrition got a thumbs up for me. I like their bars. I want to look more into them. They were super supportive of the Be Beautiful Foundation. I have talks lined up with them. We'll see what happens. I don't plan on making any big changes. I'm definitely not leaving Scratch Labs. I still, Honey Singer is my go-to. If you don't like honey, try Untapped. Honey Singer is good to me too. So with all that, that's that. We did the math. I was between, I forget what the exact number was, but I took in 1,000 grams of carbs in my 15-hour day. Moving time was 13 hours, but I took in about 2 gallons of fluid. Schyler, there is this thing, and I don't know if you're on it or not, but I hope you're not, of endurance athletes thinking that it is okay to put like 200, 300, I've actually heard 400 grams of carbs in like a 16-ounce bottle, which must taste like syrup. And they sip on that so that they only have to carry 1 bottle as they're getting in carbs through the day. But boys and girls, let me tell you how your body works. Your body is primarily water, and your cells are primarily made up of water. And when you are exercising, you sweat. And sweat is not indicative of performance. In an ideal world, we would not want to sweat, because when you sweat, you become dehydrated and you lose electrolytes that you need for your cells to function. In fact, electrolytes are so important, it's how your muscles contract. At a cellular level, they need these things to function. And you need ATP to make these processes happen. So in order to get the electrolytes into the cell, you need ATP, which you get from carbs, which is the fuel source for your body to open the channels to get enough of your electrolytes where they need to go to make your cells function and move muscle. And that's the easiest way that I can explain a very complex process. If anyone wants to butcher that, by all means, have fun. We can get into a scientific discussion, and I can show you what my credentials actually look like. So I'm not looking to anyone?
I'm on the other end. Like the amount of stuff people eat nowadays for endurance, I cannot do it all. Like
No.
I
So
need to be on the leaner side for my body to work properly. But yeah, I've seen that where some people like how much they're eating or like basically trying to survive off gels the entire time. I'm like, are you insane?
so Sky, here's my point. My
Mhm.
point is not to hate on carbs, because we'll talk about that in a second. Because I know
I'm good on
your
carbs. I'm good on
your
that.
career is very long and very different. You literally lived through all of it, and it's insane how many carbs we take in nowadays. You know, I can. I was on point. I was trying to get 90 to 100 grams of carbs an hour, and I think I got closer to the 1100, and I didn't have to do it. Not. Don't forget, guys, my first 2 hours of my race, I was struggling to get in fuel because of the speed we were moving, and it was risky for me to take my hand off the bars to eat. So I was a little under fuel for the first 2 hours. My point isn't the carbs, my point is the liquid. You
Hmm.
need to stay hydrated so that your cells can function, because what happens is when you become dehydrated, your cells literally shrivel, and they start trying to use carbs to regulate your body, which doesn't work because you can only tolerate so many carbs an hour. And for all these people that think you can do 150 carbs an hour, Poji can only do 102. We're looking at Olympic marathon runners can only do up to 120, and they train themselves to do this. I know Cam Worth did 150 an hour. You are looking at one of the most crazy fit elite athletes on the planet who is pushing his body to the limit to do it. And there's so much testing and science going into this to see if we can get above 120 for Olympic level athletes. Amateur athletes telling me they can do more is a joke. I don't care who you are, you're not special. And if you are one of those special athletes, I hope you stay with it, and I hope we get to see you on TV one day. For everyone else, you're hurting yourself. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it. They talk about it all the time. You're not having GI issues. It's hard to overfuel, but like when you're cramping or you're feeling like garbage and you can't take more in, it's because you're trying to force more than what you can tolerate. I was just talking specifically about the citric acid that Precision Nutrition and all the good companies mix in. That acid is good for you because it helps your body to be able, it helps the enzymes break down what you're putting in so you can actually metabolize the carbs going in. Because we know some of those carbs don't make it to the liver and you actually don't break them down, which is why we use fructose to boost the amount of carbs that you can get into the body. This is cellular biology, guys. I have a lot of really smart friends in the field working on this stuff, so I do pick their brain. But without the water, your stomach actually starts to slow down, because then your stomach starts to shrivel. And just like everything else, you need that water to have that balance, because when stuff starts to get too acidic, your body starts to throw it up because your stomach biome now is too acidic. So you need to balance all this. And then when you're dehydrated, it leads to cramps. I talked during the beginning about how that happens to me. Yes, I know I'm going fast and I'm butchering stuff and I'm not getting into the specifics, but I'm hitting the results section for the people that are listening. If you don't believe me in this stuff, please go pull a meta-analysis. Don't give me one article. Show me the meta-analysis, because that's the world that I live in, where we go across multiple testing platforms. I want to know who did the research, because again, if you're going to talk to me about science, then let's talk science. When we talk about performance, you need to regulate. It's summer. I'm heavy. The rest of you are just to get my ideal racing, just like you, Schyler. I love racing when it's 40 degrees because I don't sweat as much. I can hold on to electrolytes. I'm big. I sweat more. I dissipate more heat. I have more muscle, which means I have more blood vessels, which means I dissipate more heat. At a biological level, these things become a factor. So hot races are difficult. So if you are on the heavier side, and by heavier for this kind of racing, endurance racing, I mean if you're above 165 pounds, you are heavy. If you're athletic built, if you're built to play contact sports, nutrition and hydration is everything for you, and you need to get in as much fluid. I took in almost 2 gallons and it wasn't enough. Like, people don't get it.
Well, it's this thing for me. Like, everyone at my work is like, "Oh, you only go out with water." I'm like, "Yeah, I only go out with water. Most of my rides are an hour and a half to 2 hours. Like, all I need is fluid." And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, but at my size, that's my big worry is dehydrating. I need to go ahead and take in all the water that I can." Um, or
Well,
like some kind. Let's say
you
sometimes I'll have like electrolyte
oh,
mix
well,
add. But then my main thing is just the fluid. Even when I'm doing the 2 hour, endurance races, like fluid is my biggest issue. It's not anything else.
so
But
we also want to remember, though, like, besides you sucking at nutrition and being terrible and pushing bad habits, you have to train your gut to be able to hold on to this much. I was talking to Joe on. I told him, do not attempt to eat what I eat. It's taking me years to be able to learn how to metabolize this stuff. Like, there were hours I went over 100 grams. There were hours I got closer to 120. That's fine. My heart rate was low. I was able to metabolize. When you're in zone 2, everyone else's zone 3, my zone 2, your stomach starts to shut down. So you also have to manage pacing. Like, this all goes into it. You have to train your gut to be able to do these things. You train your gut like a muscle so that you can metabolize. Leading up to the race, how you're eating, what's already in your stomach, teaching your body through proper workout plans and training modules to be able to effectively use different fueling sources. Like, yeah, at 2 hours of motorcycle racing, you're gonna probably hit that wall. Hydration is definitely more important cramping wise, but it's not like running a marathon where you're burning 1,000 calories an hour and you're burning through your carb stores. Like, depending on the racing you're doing, it's fine. It's like, for the same reason, guys, like, if I'm doing a 10K, I don't need to eat. I need to keep my fluids up. I need to make sure I don't cramp. I don't need to eat. I don't need more carbs for an hour. And if you've never hit the wall, go run a marathon. Or go run a half marathon at full speed and don't take in any nutrition at all. Just go with water. You will find the wall. The point is, in an ideal world, any sports dietitian will tell you, not nutritionists, guys, dietitians will tell you, you would put back in everything you lose and you would be able to go forever. But that's not the case. It's impossible to do it because your body can't metabolize enough carbs and enough calories that you're burning under extreme exercise. So we try to put in as much as we can so that we're constantly, it's like bucketing out the water of a sinking ship. You're never going to stay ahead of it, but we're trying to do our best to stay on top so that we don't sink. And when you do hit that wall, that's when you didn't keep up. And this is the point of nutrition. And that's why, yes, 1,100 grams of carbs. I was out there for 13 hours. I should have taken 200 more. And I know which hours I didn't. It's fine. I'm also now factoring some of the food I ate at the aid station. So I might have actually been right on point. I could have actually been very close to 13. But yeah, about 100 grams an hour. That's what everyone's doing. Every pro that I talk to in that paddock or village, whatever we want to call it, everyone was fueling for 100 grams an hour. All the guys that were favored to win, 100 grams an hour. Front loading, as in, we're going to try to go to 120 at the beginning, knowing that at the end of the race, they weren't going to metabolize as well. So this whole concept of 150 an hour, just because Cam did it, you guys are not Cam Worth. There is only one Cam Worth. That is my point.
Not to cut you off, but I'm at like 2% battery, so I'm about to cut out.
So we've been going for a really long time. I love the insight, Schyler. I think that you and I have to start doing this a little more frequently so we can talk about some of these things like nutrition and get the fun side of our conversations like what we're getting to. Again, everyone, Be Beautiful Foundation. If anyone wants to get involved with any of our sponsors, we just lost Schyler. So I will finish out myself. Let's see if I can. If anyone wants to get involved in what we do, the Be Beautiful Foundation is all about getting athletes living with developmental disabilities involved in healthy and active lifestyles. Shout out to Animal Pack, shout out to Rudy Project, shout out to Roll Recovery, Blue 70, 51 Speed Shop, Pearl Izumi, Jackville Apparel, Community Hope for Veterans. Anyone that I'm forgetting, I apologize. Ridgewood Cycle. I want to make sure I hit Roll Recovery. Zupac Athletic Club, Ray Botello Fitness, RB Fitness. He's my coach who gets me through everything. Thank you, everyone, for the support. I hope you like this podcast. We'll do more in-depth analysis. And as always, hashtag be beautiful, hashtag stay beautiful. We'll see everyone next time.